Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 3 minutes past 10 is the time, and thank you very much indeed for joining us, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or you're on your smart speaker, maybe you're watching on YouTube or you're connected to us. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just a reminder, I'm going to be nagging you all week about this, because as of next Monday, which is the 1st of December, and again, I'm still in absolute shock that basically this year is over. Our talkTV app is going to be on the move. It's going to disappear. It's not going to exist anymore. But everything is moving to our Talk app. See what we did there? We're just pretending it never happened, which is the best way to think about it, I think. And so you'll need to download the Talk app from the App Store or Google Play. So we're just going to stop for a couple of minutes while you do that now. We should put some music ready, shouldn't we? Right, have you done it? Right, anyway, if you need to do that, please do that, and then you make sure you won't miss a single thing. Anyway, we're on all the way until 1 o'clock before Ian Collins takes over. And if you do miss anything from my show, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing, you lucky, lucky things. Now, we're going to be talking a lot this hour about both Rachel Reeves and Nigel Farage in the news for rather different reasons. I'd love to hear your thoughts on either of them, really. Rachel Reeves has said it's not a pick and mix budget, this. She told Labour MPs last night, you have to accept the whole thing, but it's going to be progressive, going to tax those awful rich people. Ugh, hate them. Ugh, boo, hiss. But yeah, she's also going to tax working people, which pretty sure was in the manifesto, but something they weren't going to do. Now, whether that is actually cutting your £20,000 ISA or cash ISA that's tax-free, the allowance for that for people to save really safely down to just £10,000, or whether it's basically those thresholds on your income tax going up and up and up, so you can be on a really normal average income and still be paying more tax, you name it. Very rich, of course, going to be hit by the mansion tax. If you buy a milkshake, you're going to be hit by that, you name it, they're going to be hit. That said, as an extra 15 billion quid goes on welfare, astonishingly, meanwhile, disability claimants are going to be cut off from leasing BMWs and Mercs through the taxpayer-subsidised Motability scheme. Basically, ministers raised concerns it was unfair to working families who largely can't afford to buy BMWs and Mercedes. It's quite extraordinary that was ever allowed, it really is, and well, proof is in the pudding when they do actually ban that. But we are also going to be talking about Nigel Farage. He's very much in the news. He said he did not racially abuse fellow pupils while at school in the 80s in a hurtful or insulting way. As follows reports from that the Reform UK leader allegedly made racist and anti-Semitic comments while he was a pupil at Dulwich College, an independent school in South London. Mr Farage said yesterday that the racism claims was just banter in the playground. It was 50 years ago. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What's your reaction? Does it matter what he did when he was at school, what he said? Do you think that he did or did not say these things? An awful lot of people have said they think he did say racist or anti-Semitic things. An awful lot of other classmates say they don't recall it at all. It was, he's only a few years older than me, it was a very, very different time when you think about what was on Saturday night television, what was going on the football terraces, and what was normal conversation then, and what was and was not considered acceptable. But did the comments that he is reported to have said, did they cross that line? Doesn't make any difference about whether or not he is who the person he is today. Does it mean he is more or less or the same fit to be Prime Minister, as the polls suggest he would be? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Is this just a Guardian and a bunch of lefty liberal so-called progressives who were a boys' private school who basically want to put the knife in to Nigel Farage because they still hate him over Brexit? They think that anyone who wants borders is a racist and they want to put the knife in and prevent him becoming Prime Minister? Or is this a fair topic of debate and conversation? I want to know what you think about that. I'm going to give you my views in just a moment, but give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking a bit about the BBC, because I don't know if you struggled through any of their 3 hours of hearings yesterday. It was various different BBC chiefs, including Samir Shah, the chairman, who says he's not resigning. What an unimpressive bunch they were. If you have any worries about why why the BBC is in the state it is, look no further, I would say. We'll be talking about all of that. Now, plenty more to talk about as well, and obviously a lot on the budget, obviously crucially coming up tomorrow. In about 26 and a half hours, we should be getting the budget from Rachel Reeves. But joining us for all the chat this morning, delighted to say, is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Just want to clarify, you were in the news only earlier this week about losing a cinema booking to do your brilliant documentary about free speech, and you'd lost your booking because apparently their values didn't include free speech. Funnily enough, this cinema, Shane. Have you found anywhere else to put your film?
Yes, we have. So thank you for having me on the show last week to discuss this. We got cancelled.
Was it last week? Has the week just gone by?
Oh, no, it's only been a few, it feels like it's been a complete blur, certainly to those of us in the eye of the storm of this. But yes, last week we were cancelled because our premiere didn't align with the values of the venue. After a frantic search, we have found a new venue for the same time tonight, 7 p.m. in central London. We've sent it out to everyone who's got tickets or has been invited, because we've learnt that maybe publicising it might not stand us in as good stead.
What a bizarre and crazy
but
world.
it is going ahead, cancelled and then uncancelled, and thank you so much for giving us the coverage.
No, I mean, as you know, we are. I mean, whether I agreed or disagreed with the film, I've watched the film and think it's brilliant. You can still see it on Spiked Online. You don't have to go to fancy premiere. You can just watch it online. But anyway, Tom, let's talk first of all about the budget. Then we want to talk about Nigel Farage. Rachel Reeves, I mean, the leaks from this budget, I don't think she's got anything left to say tomorrow. And if she does, I can't think what it is. But she's told MPs in a meeting with them last night, which of course was immediately leaked, that they need to unite around the budget, which says it's not a pick and mix budget. There'll be progressive things in it, i.e. higher rates of tax being paid by richer people than lower income people. But, you have to take it as a package deal. But now we hear that we're looking at, so savers who's pretty much only saving will be their ISA, and they'll have gone for the cash ISA, which is now 20 grand a year, which you can save 20 grand without paying any tax on it. And apparently we're looking at having that being cut from 20 grand to 10 grand because they want people to get, stocks and shares ISAs, probably just before the stock market crashes on Thursday after the budget, no doubt. People have a right to say, I want to not have particularly big gains, I just want to be safe. And, and it's a really good way of encouraging people to say, we are talking about these tax thresholds changing, which is going to drag an awful lot more people at low incomes and middle incomes into higher rates of tax. And at the same time, we're not seeing benefits being hit. And people increasingly angry about 5 million Brits on benefits, not working, an awful lot of whom could perfectly capably work. If you look at the statistics across other European countries, we would be uniquely sick and disabled and ill in the Western world if that were the case. And yet, everyone's going to be hit with more taxes who's trying to do the right thing, whether it's working or saving or, improving their home. Yeah, OK, I don't own a £2 million home, but I don't begrudge people who do. But they're going to be hit with a mansion tax. What do you make of it all?
Well, I think it's fundamentally a budget which is designed to placate the Parliamentary Labour Party. I think it's become clear that even when they came in and they were talking a pretty big game about economic growth, they were talking a big game about we need to reform the welfare state, that with one kind of failure or U-turn after another, it's clear that the focus has just become on internal party management. So there's a certain extent to which Rachel Reeves won't go, but she needs to have something that looks like taxing the rich. You've got the mansion tax involved there.
The politics of envy is very strong among Labour backbenchers.
Exactly, and even though it will barely touch the sides in terms of being able to actually genuinely help the public finances or the economy more broadly, it just feels good to them. So that's something which they're willing to, which is clearly part of the picture.
But also there's an element, isn't there, where you can go, oh great, OK, the rich are being taxed more, fine. But if you are struggling to pay your energy bill right now, you're worrying about, oh God, it's another cold couple of days. Can I afford to have the heating on? And you're worrying about food and putting petrol in the car and everything else. I mean, it doesn't make any difference whether they're paying a bit more tax or not. If your taxes are going up, whether it's VAT or just your income tax, it still hits you whether they pay more or not.
No, exactly. And it's one of those things where people are really going to feel it. That's why I think even though there are going to be some things in this budget which do look like soaking the rich, that's not how it's going to be interpreted. I think people are going to see, I can't save in my ISA in the way that I could to the same extent. There's extent to which people feel as if things like around the kind of salary saving schemes being taken away from them is another way in which people doing the right thing or trying to be sensible about the future is being penalised. And I also just think politically this is going to land terribly. I mean, I don't see any plaudits coming from any section of society.
But that will be people being sexist. Because we've established, because Rachel Reeves has doubled down after that FT interview at the weekend about how all the criticism and women get more criticism in public life and it's misogynistic. And she hit back yet again in this meeting with MPs about misogynist. I mean, people call her Rachel from accounts to mock her from the fact that she comes across as such an also-ran mediocre nobody who lied on her CV and claimed to be an economist at a major bank when in fact she kind of worked in the back room dealing with complaints. I mean, that's why people are mocking you. It's not because you've got breasts and a womb. I mean, I'm sorry, it's embarrassing that she claims that.
It is really embarrassing, and it's also, it'd be one thing if this was a flippant line or something that they thought that they float out there in order to get some positive headlines in the press, in the left-leaning press. This is clearly what she actually thinks, and that's almost much more dangerous. Like, if you're really that self-victimising, if you're really that impervious to criticism, if you genuinely do believe, like a kind of Tumblr feminist 10 years ago, that any criticism of a woman in a position of power is de facto racist, then not racist, sorry, it's misogynistic.
Oh no, it's probably that too.
It's probably that too as well. Then of course, it just shows, it's another reason to show she's not fit for the office in which she's currently holding.
I mean, and that's the thing, and it really undermines other women as well, but also this idea, the bond markets are probably sexist and misogynistic as well. But again, they didn't have a problem. They did go after Liz Truss, didn't they? They didn't go,
Poor old Liz Truss.
Yeah, they didn't go after Margaret Thatcher, they didn't, I mean, they didn't go after Theresa May. I mean, come on, this is just an absolute nonsense.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's desperate. And I think this government realises that it's fighting for its life, really, so it's becoming more erratic in what it's doing. The fact that going into this, we were being very clearly told through various kind of kite-flying interviews that there was going to be, a couple of pennies more on income tax and all of these potentially manifesto commitment-busting pledges, and then to row those back, it's not even that it's got a plan that's unpopular and it's ploughing ahead with it. It hasn't got a plan and it's driving all around.
There absolutely is no plan at all. And we know the voters in the polls are basically saying, look, you're in the last chance saloon now, but okay, and maybe it's for kids' time. I mean, she apparently said she's going to be here next year and the year after. Oh, sweetheart. Sorry to be misogynistic. You won't be. Rachel Reeves, I'm telling you right now, tomorrow is your last budget. Enjoy it. Enjoy it, because it will be your last. Rachel, I mean, the question is, who is going to take over? Will there be will there be another Labour leader? Will another Labour chancellor? Will there be a general election? I mean, will there be a run on the pound? I mean, who knows? And would there be elections as a result of that? Well, there seems to be a lot of concern about Nigel Farage becoming the next Prime Minister. That's what the polls say. Pretty much no matter what, that's what the polls say. Look, things can change a heck of a lot in a week, in a month, in a few years. But what do you make of this criticism of Nigel Farage over stuff that he said at school? No one's saying he said this at university or the years after. I don't probably went to university or not, but I can honestly say categorically, I've known that man for many, many years, and I've never heard him say anything racist or anti-Semitic or anything like that ever. In a drunken lunch, in a pub, in a bar, never heard that at all. And it is interesting that these allegations are from people who was at school with many years ago. It's not just one person; it's a number of people. There's some teachers talking about some of the things. There's sort of Nazi salutes, saying Sieg Heil, telling a Jewish student, the Hitler was right. Put you back in the gas chambers. There were some nasty anti-Semitic chants that were very common on the football terraces in the 80s as well, and some lots of bigging up of Enoch Powell. But again, a very well-respected figure for many years. If you look at the tributes paid by Tony Blair when he died, I mean, he could be one of the greatest minds of his generation, or similar words. Nigel Farage has dismissed it as playground banter, but his denial, and bearing in mind a lot of these allegations came out from Michael Crick in a book he wrote a few years ago, and in reports he did for Channel 4 before that. So these aren't particularly new. We've known about these for a while. I'm going to play a quick clip of what Nigel Farage said in a pooled interview yesterday about these allegations and what he has said in response. Have a watch and a listen.
School categorically on the record, you did not racially abuse fellow pupils.
I would never, ever do it in a hurtful or insulting way.
That's not quite the same as not doing it.
It's 49 years ago. It's 49 years ago.
What difference is the time?
Isn't it? Well, I just entered my teens. Can I remember everything that happened at school? No, I can't. Have I said things 50 years ago that you could interpret as being banter in a playground, that you could interpret in the modern light of day in some sort of way? Yes.
It was a kind of non-denial denial, I think is what they're called. It does sound like he's not saying I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
That was, untoward. It was 50 years ago. You can't remember everything, blah, blah, blah. I've got a funny feeling, Dom Slater, that he wasn't a very nice kid in his teenage years, and he was out to shock people and was pretty unpleasant and may indeed have been a bit of a bully to some children and may have singled them out, some of them, because of race. I don't know. Do you think what he's done is racist? Do you think he's racist now? Do you think this has any implications for him today? I suppose is the issue.
Well, I go back to that Michael Crick book, which I think is instructive because it's where these allegations were first kind of properly, deeply reported. And also Michael Crick is no fan of Nigel Farage.
Yes, I think we can safely say.
That is not a cosy biography by any stretch of the imagination. And the kind of conclusion he comes to is that there's a group of people who allege that this behaviour happened. There's a group of people who don't really remember any of this happening.
They say they didn't see anything of the sort, whereas other people are saying it was very common and he did, goose stepping in the playground, and there's other people saying never saw anything like that.
And the conclusion that, if I'm remembering correctly, that Crick comes to is kind of somewhere in the middle, which is that he was clearly, as a young man, someone who would willfully engage in this quite offensive behaviour to get a response, but that he didn't think that necessarily meant that that was kind of at the core of who he is today, or necessarily even at the time. That, I think, is probably about the right way to read it. He
concluded, actually, that he didn't believe that Nigel Farage was a racist.
Exactly.
That was his conclusion.
Which, coming from someone who is, in many respects, an arch critic of him, I think is at least a conclusion that we should listen to. Of course, if this behaviour did take place, and as you say, Nigel Farage's comments would suggest that at the very least he thinks there's a possibility that he actually behaved in that despicable fashion.
No, that's not. I mean, the party's been saying this is all untrue.
Yeah.
He didn't say that.
He did not say that there.
And he's not going to be worried that there's a video. People didn't have smartphones
exactly.
then. There won't be videos of this stuff.
But, and maybe it's just trying to be a little bit more honest in a slightly denial way. But I think it does also come down to the fact that we do have to take people in terms of their record. Does that mean the way they behaved as children? Almost certainly not.
Well, this is it.
It's not to dismiss that. It's not to say that if that behaviour happened then, now, whatever, that it shouldn't be dealt with and that it's completely despicable. Of course not. But at the same time, this is... we have to make a distinction between the sorts of horrendous things someone might have said as a young person and the person that they've been since. And we can judge them on that basis rather than... it is offence archaeology.
I was just going to use that phrase. It's people digging up something someone said. And again, by the way, someone, a very, very right-on lefty sort of talking about, women's rights, and then being accused of being a transphobe 10 minutes later. That can happen. I mean, I can honestly say 100% hand on heart, there'll be no one I've ever met in my life at any age who will have heard me say anything anti-Semitic or racist. I grew up, I'm 3 years younger than Nigel Farage, but I think I probably grew up in a different world. I had, left-wing parents, and I'm very, I would say progressive in the right way, as in fact women's rights and gay rights and racial difference and things. And so these ideas wouldn't have crossed my mind. Okay, I think if you grow up, I'm not defending anything that he did or did not say. I think you grew up in that sort of, I think, quite a nasty public school boy world. I think the world was very different. I think there was just nasty sort of bullying, and some bloody awful things were said to people. I think probably quite routinely. But if you look at things like what was on TV, we're talking early 80s here, aren't we? If you look at what was on telly, some of these allegations when he was 13, some up to the age of 17, 18, but at the age of 13, I mean, you're talking about stuff on television where, I mean, stuff that would genuinely shock even reform voters now was on telly and was considered prime time on a Saturday night. I think the world was just a very different place. There's also an element where, again, I'm with you. I just think, it's a long time ago. If he said those things when he was 30, I'd be like, well, OK, I've got some big question marks, please, Nigel. And Nigel Farage, please come on any time to discuss this. But, I mean, I just think this whole idea that you are the person you were when you were 13 or even 18, is absurd. Especially when you're 60. I mean, he's 60 years old.
Yeah.
People change. And if there was evidence that he'd said something similar to this, or that he had turned a blind eye to racism, that man has booted out people from more... The reason he's got so many enemies on the right is he keeps booting out people who he perceives to have been racist. So, it's, you've got to judge people on what they do and what they say in the here and now and in their recent adult history, rather than some... Frankly, it sounds like pretty sodding, horrible comments, bullying comments that he did or did not do in his early teens.
No, exactly. And because Nigel Farage has been on the political scene for as long as he has, there's plenty of record to look at. And if anyone wants to take issue with any of that, absolutely they should. There is a certain point in which if we're digging up what people said as teenagers or as young men as a means to get at them now, it does start to demean politics. It just becomes a way of trying to bring people down via any other means.
But also it doesn't allow people... I mean, these are the same people who think that, you can reform a rapist and a murderer and, and a terrorist. These are the people who genuinely think you can reform somebody who has blown up children in a terror attack, OK? And the same people would say, but Nigel Farage may or may not have said something nasty 50 years ago, so therefore he can't be a different person now. I mean, come on. No, you can't have it both ways.
Exactly, and you hit the nail on the head when you said it doesn't excuse it to also point out the context. This was a period in which racial slurs were punchlines on primetime sitcom
and they really
television.
Were.
This was a time in which racism throughout society was really rife to an extent that it really isn't today, despite the claims of The Guardian and other newspapers like that. Does that excuse what happened? No, but that at least means that it's not. It needs to be kind of looked at in that context, especially when you're talking about a young person rather than someone who's gone into their adult life taking some of that residual kind of.
I hate to tell you again, if you ask the views of most of our grandparents, certainly my age, they'll say things you go, oh, you shouldn't say that. I'm sorry, but that's what was normal language or, comments. I mean, this comes, by the way, David Lammy, our Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary, was asked who his childhood role models were, but he's graduated over his life, and he names Bill Cosby, who has been accused of numerous rapes and sexual assaults. I know there's some technicalities got off of something, but the numerous number of allegations, very convincing allegations from women. I mean, but of course he's talking about him when he was this incredibly important figure on American television as the first sort of middle-class, respectable, not a criminal. Black people, particularly black men, were portrayed basically you were a criminal or a drug dealer or a pimp on American TV, and suddenly you had this middle-class doctor married to a middle-class lawyer, being a great dad and a great husband. This was absolutely game-changing TV in America at this time. And he's sort of saying, obviously, I mean, again, we can all mock David Lammy because the man is a fool, but he's making the point that at that time it's really important. Yeah, because at that time the world was very different, but now we know different things. But isn't that the whole point? No,
exactly. And I think this is another good example of how this is revealing about David Lammy only insofar as he keeps putting his foot in it. Even if you wanted to say that I really appreciated Bill Cosby's early work, shall we say, you don't say that if you're a prominent politician, because it's only going to be...
Fine, think of someone else. Think of someone else, I know. Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I have to say, I asked that, the board's already completely lit up. 0344 499 1000, give us your thoughts on Nigel Farage and these allegations and his response. Love to hear your thoughts on Rachel Reeves. I mean, again, we're all misogynist. And it's not a pick and mix budget, but we're all going to be here. I don't think anyone's going to come out of this budget least of all the Chancellor. Maybe she'll have to go back to dealing with complaints at HMOS. Maybe that's where she should have been all along. Me, the sexist. 10:26 is the time. I want to hear what you have to say. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
They will never, ever change. Just like I was saying, my mother's wisdom, she used to say in Bolton they'd vote for a pig with a red ribbon on it. Well, it's like Tunbridge Wells, they vote for a pig with a blue one in it there when there's some. But I think all that's turning around. But I'll tell you what really strikes me, though, having seen that poll and gone through the numbers, is if you add up Labour, Lib Dem and the Greens, and then you've got the SNP and Plaid Cymru as well, is they still get 50. There's still half the country who think those people should rule.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have deteriorated since a year ago. We are happy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home Common Sense. 10:30 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls and your text messages. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch about Nigel Farage. In fact, that's pretty much all the calls are on Nigel Farage. Don't worry about the budget. Let's talk about Nigel Farage. Herbie is in Harrow and wants to have his say. Hello, Herbie.
Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
You know, politics is a dirty business. If they want to go for you, they will go for you. If there's somebody out there gunning for you, they're going to go for you. These are Mr. and Mrs. Perfect, aren't they? You know, they've got nothing better else to do than to try and trip up somebody. I bet you they're not perfect. I bet you they've got a problem themselves. Julie, when the first programme I went on TV, I went there and I said to, I forget who the presenter was now, I said, I'm here today to find the people with the halo and white wings. And do you know what? I can't find anybody here.
Yeah.
And it's strange. I said, I bet you they got a skeleton in their cupboard. You know, the man has never done any... I've known Nigel for years. I've never heard him say a nasty thing about anybody to anyone. Okay, he might have some, you know, people in his party that are not very... we get him in everything. I'm just so annoyed with the way things are going at the moment. It's just unbelievable. You know, the man's genuine. You know, look at him today. Base him on what he's doing today.
This is the thing. I think that's where most people are. They think of this as a gotcha. But bearing in mind, a lot of these people who said these things to The Guardian, you know, again, it's The Guardian. And an awful lot of these people are, you know, you can... I'm sorry, but they're, you know, they're central casting sort of, you know, liberal Remainer lefties, a lot of them. Doesn't mean what they're saying isn't true, but they've got an axe to grind. And bearing in mind, these people think that we're all, like 52% of the population is either racist or stupid for voting for Brexit. That's why they hate him.
But, Julie, look, life changes. Look, I've got a difference of opinion today than I did last week. I've got a different opinion. I might have a different opinion tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, we're human beings. We come in and go out of things of favour. You know, that's what life's all about.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, Herbie, I voted for Tony Blair and I voted Lib Dem. People change. I'll tell you, Herbie, thank you so much for your call. Couldn't agree with you more on all of that. Matthew is in Cheshire and wants to have his say. Hi, Matthew.
Good morning, Julie. It's an absolute pleasure to hear your voice.
Oh,
absolute pleasure.
And yours, sir, and yours.
Nigel Farage, the scrape in the barrel there. You know, I grew up in the 70s. We had programmes like Love Thy Neighbour, Deaf Doers Part, Mixed Blessings, Mind Your Language. The racism, vocal racism was apparent in all TV. It was wrong, very wrong. But when you went to school, you listened to the Madness song, Baggy Trousers. That's what school was like in the 70s and the 80s. It was exactly like that. It's not like that now. It was.
Well, I don't know. I think it's brutal in a different way now because I think school for a lot of people was pretty brutal. But I think boys' private schools were particularly nasty.
Well, didn't David Cameron do something quite naughty when he was at private schools? There's stories flying about him.
No, that was the allegation. That was when he was at Oxford. He was at uni. So
yeah, but all these private schools and computer schools, boys will be boys, and they do silly things because we're not. Women are clever. Girls are clever. They grow up a lot quicker than boys. Those boys.
Oh no, girls can be really nasty. Boys will just have a punch up in the playground, and girls will just sort of like be vicious for a year to a girl. Come on.
Well, maybe. Well, I'm trying to show me feminist side. I always find girls a little bit. Yeah, girls can be a little bit naughty. But when we was at school, we did the goose march and we did daft things and just messed around. And I just think the more these other people dig Farage out, the bigger more popular they're going to make him.
I think you're probably right. I really think you're probably right. Exactly. And again, I think people forget different times. I mean, such different times. I mean, one of the chants that he's accused of is that apparently was completely normal on the football terraces. Again, it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. But I don't think we can hold everybody up to. It's like the whole sort of holding Britain up to the standards right now and our views on slavery to 300 years ago. Different times. Some of the text messages as well. Mike says his opponents are a complete embarrassment if this is the best they can do. Neil says 50 years ago we were that traumatised it took until now to 50 years ago were they that traumatised it took them until now to mention it. Well, some of them mentioned it to Michael Quick a few years ago. Isla says doesn't surprise me. 50 years ago everyone was openly racist in the UK. They weren't all, but a lot of people were. Angela says I couldn't care less if Farage bullied some kids. And Celia says I swore in science class 29 years ago. Shall I do detention now? I think that's kind of the attitude there. Just some breaking news, very encouraging breaking news. The co-creator of Father Ted, Graham Linehan, has just been cleared at Westminster Magistrates Court of harassing transgender activist Sophia Brooks. He was, though, found guilty. Well, this is what PA says. He was found guilty of criminal damage to their mobile phone. Sophia Brooks is a trans activist, is a trans-identified man, and therefore it was his mobile phone. We use correct biological and grammatical language on this show. So he threw his phone. Okay, when he had his phone in his face, he threw his phone. So yeah, that's fair dues. It seems to me, although he was being harassed, but he has. I think Graham Linehan was being harassed at that time. Someone had their phone in his face, but he has been cleared of harassing trans activists. That was, of course, the court case that he was returning to the UK for earlier this year when he was arrested by 5 armed police officers at Heathrow Airport over some tweets he had posted about in April earlier this year. So that's good news for Graham Linehan. Excellent news on that front, mostly. We are in a strange world, are we not? 10:36 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to political editor of The New World, James Ball, what he makes of Nigel Farage allegations and what he makes of what we're going to hear in the budget tomorrow. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. 10:30 at 9 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest, James Ball. He's political editor of The New World, previously The New European, but they've discovered there is somewhere else other than the EU. Morning to you, James.
Good morning.
I'm never going to tire of saying that. It's lovely to speak to you.
You never are you?
I want to talk to you, first of all, about the budget, and I also want to talk to you about Nigel Farage of the BBC. Let's get straight to it. Rachel Reeves has told MPs last night this isn't a pick and mix budget. It's going to be progressive, but there's going to be stuff you don't like. But let's be honest, there's going to be a heck of a lot of stuff that an awful lot of people don't like, including those working families that she said, and her boss, Keir Starmer, said, and every MP said under their manifesto last year, that those working families that they weren't going to hit.
I think essentially there's a bit of a danger that they've been too indecisive and tried to be too clever by half with sticking to the manifesto promise. The issue
so they shouldn't stick to the manifesto promise.
I think that they've got themselves the worst of both worlds. They clearly were planning on breaking it for a while. They briefed that they were going to break it. Rachel Reeves did that speech softening us up. And then they seem to have decided against it on the income tax rise. And the problem is that means you get a lot of the political hit for breaking a promise or wanting to break your promise, but you get none of the money. And the thing with big taxes like income tax, national insurance or VAT is if you raise them, yes, we all hate it, but it raises a lot of money. And if you needed that money and you don't have it now, you've got to do an awful lot of fiddling with little taxes to do it. And a lot of those little taxes really irritate us. You know, they hit a few people very hard, or they annoy us in lots of ways. They're visible. And so if it's a budget with 20 or 30 little tax rises, instead of just grasping the nettle and doing income tax, I don't think it would have been popular to break the promise and raise it, but they do risk taking a political hit and not getting the cash and still having to find money elsewhere.
And I mean, there's a very fair point. And the interesting thing is, I mean, trust in politicians is at virtually zero anyway. And I think we were all saying, weren't we, before the July 24 election, you know, you're not going to be able to stick to these promises. And you know, the IFS and others are saying you're not going to be able to stick to these promises. And they carried on anyway. But perhaps it would be more honest. But the reality is, you know, working people are going to be paying more tax. Full stop. These thresholds being frozen for a couple more years. And it was already going to be done under the Tories. It's been done lots of times before. They're going to be paying more tax. Everyone's going to be paying more for everything.
Yeah, and I think if you're a Labour government, I think you will pick up more credit, even if people won't be dancing in the street by just saying, we shouldn't have made this promise. We should have known better. We need to do this. We're going to raise some taxes on rich people, but we need to raise tax on everyone. And because we've done this, we are done this time. We won't have to keep coming back.
But she said
next
that
year
last year.
Well, that is.
But
her
this
problem.
is the thing. The reports that the Office for Budget Responsibility is going to downgrade their growth forecasts, which were pretty poor anyway. We've seen, you know, negligible growth. We are basically at a standstill this year, and growth was the number one thing. That's what they were going to do to cut the debt and not have to raise taxes. You know, basically, the government is having to raise more taxes because they haven't delivered growth, because of the taxes they raised last year. So the solution to that is to raise more taxes this year. I've got a feeling, James, this isn't going to end up going very well.
We're growing about the same as everyone else. Amazingly, we scraped being the first in G7, which tells you how bad it is everywhere. Look, I'm not trying to turn around and go, this is amazing, but we're among the least
awful of the awful economies. I mean, this is not, but we've also got a huge amount of debt. Okay, we haven't got the highest debt ratio as, you know, as France or other countries, but we're paying more for our debt because they don't believe the money markets, whether people like it or not, the money markets do get to decide the borrowing costs. They don't believe that this government is on top of things. We've got more benefits going out. The polling is very clear. Look, people never want their taxes to go up, but people also usually want spending to go up. But they're quite clear now. They want benefits cut.
I think people want benefits cut until you talk about specific benefits and until you see the losers. And it's very easy for people to say yes in general, and the polls show people say yes in general. And then when you get to individual benefits and when you see what it's there, the public opinion goes down a lot.
You think the public's going to change their mind about someone who says, I'm a bit anxious on a Monday from being allowed to not work for the rest of their life, or that they're going to change their mind on the two-child benefit cap? Because the public, including Labour voters, more than half of Labour voters even, don't want the two-child benefit cap scrapped. Why? Because they know perfectly well the families in their own street who are taking the mick.
I think there are some policies a government should do even when they're unpopular. I'm sure you would agree on that. I actually think that two-child benefit cap is one of them.
Why?
I think it's a small amount of money and it would take 300,000 children a year out of poverty.
No, there are plenty of other ways of taking those children out of poverty. No, of course it's not the kids' fault, it's the parents' fault. You can take those kids out of poverty by the parents getting a job. In most of those families, don't tell me they're working families, they're not. In most of those families,
the majority of those families have a working parent.
No, they have one parent working part-time at best. If you've got 3 or more kids and you're not both working, which is what most other families do, you're not doing your job as a parent, and you shouldn't be having more kids.
Aren't two-parent families. If you're a single parent and you're working 24 hours a week, that's as many as you can.
Are actually two-parent families, because most of them actually, a huge percentage of them are Bangladeshi and Pakistani heritage families, and they have very few single-parent families in them, as you know, because of the stigma of divorce in those communities. I've lots of friends who are single parents and family members. They've all worked full-time.
I think it's possible when you're on a higher income. It's very hard.
No.
It's hard if you don't have family.
My sister-in-law is a nurse.
It's not easy.
She's worked full-time.
Easy.
She's worked full-time throughout. Because she has to, because that's how you support. That's how families support themselves. I'm sorry, this is such a Hampstead, Islington, North London, noblesse.
I grew up in Halifax,
attitude.
Julia.
No, but you know that it's just this idea. Oh, these poor people. People making bad decisions about their families and about their own lives should not expect other people to pick up the tab.
I don't think we should punish kids for the decisions of their parents.
The parents are punishing their kids.
And I also don't think we should punish people for having kids when we're worried about our sort of.
I am very keen on more people having kids, but as a general rule, if we want more children to be born, so that they can become the taxpayers of the future and fund things. Yeah. Well, statistically, the children of parents out of work are very unlikely to be the future taxpayers. I hate to tell you.
Well, if we make sure there's good children's services and that the kids are less likely to be growing up in poverty, then they're much likelier to have good outcomes as adults and good jobs as adults.
Go out and get a job to support your family. That'll be good for the kids for their income and good for their future.
Well, we did that with the two-child benefit cap. How's that worked out? It's been hundreds of thousands more kids in poverty, and it hasn't led to the better outcomes. They're not in poverty.
It's called relative poverty. They're not in poverty. These kids are not wandering around barefoot, scrabbling around begging for food. Well, a load of nonsense.
I mean, you will find a lot of kids in pretty rough circumstances. I'm sorry they're not poor enough for you, but they're pretty much struggling.
I think that's an absolute load of nonsense. If they're struggling that badly, Mum would go out to work, wouldn't she, and stop having kids. And Dad would work a few extra hours.
I don't feel like
that's literally what people do when they're struggling. That's what they do. My dad, when he was a teenager, did a milk round, a paper round and a coal round to help the family out with money because there was no money for food otherwise, right? That's what people do.
Look, people have hard circumstances. We live in the world we live in.
And they go out to work to make life better.
If there is something for a relatively small amount of money that all the numbers say will work and will take kids out of poverty. As a realist, I want that.
No, they're just going to be more kids born to feckless families who don't work. That's what's going to happen. And you can speak to anyone on a benefits counter in jobs, and they will tell you exactly that. Right, we're really short on time. I want to ask you really briefly about Nigel Farage. Do you think the revelations about him and his denial that he did not directly, in a hurtful or insulting way, racially abuse fellow pupils when he was at school back in the late 70s and 80s, does that have any impact on whether or not he should be Prime Minister?
Not really. I might get kicked out of the left for this, but I don't care what a 60-year-old man did at school all that much. I do think it's a bit sort of cheap that he spent a week trying to say he never said it and he danced around it and now he said it, but it was only a joke. Just own it. I mean, come on, just say, look, I said some stupid stuff at school. I would never say that now. I'm sorry if it upsets someone. That, I think, doesn't reflect very well on him. I don't like him very much. I didn't like him before. So what he said at school, though, I don't really care.
Very interesting. James Ball, please go to the new one. Thank you very much. Going to let Tom Slater from Spiked Online come back in on the budget, on Nigel, whatever you want to say.
Well, I think James's point there about how they've handled this politically terribly is exactly right. I mean, this government is getting no credit from anyone for the decisions that it's making. And it's almost like it's already dead on arrival, this budget.
Completely. We're not even waiting for the pasty tax.
No, exactly. And it's not even as simple as saying, well, you know, budgets which are going to squeeze people in the pocket are always going to be unpopular. Budgets at times of economic uncertainty are always going to go down like a lead balloon. You can shape the politics of this. You can make an argument to the electorate that XYZ thing is necessary.
Well, we need to put taxes
time.
up because we're going to build some infrastructure. We're going to do the things that we're going to invest in schools. No, we're just going to give it to some more people on welfare.
And so it's one of those things where it's all bitter medicine with no payoff or no sense of where it's going.
There's no jam tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's the trouble. Thank you very much, Dee, for that. 10:49 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000. Up next, going to talk to Defund the BBC's campaign director, Rebecca Ryan. Found out what she made of the... Good Lord, 3 hours of evidence from BBC chiefs yesterday to the House of Commons. I think I survived about 15 minutes of it, but I wonder what she makes of it. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:53 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to my next guest and talk about the BBC. God, they're normally talking about themselves, aren't they? Well, they certainly were yesterday. BBC chiefs, including Samir Shah, the BBC chairman, were appearing before MPs in the Culture Select Committee yesterday to answer questions about all these allegations of bias and what the heck is going on, the chaotic BBC. And 3 hours later, some of us were still awake, but most of those who'd walked away from watching it. But I wondered if Rebecca Ryan suffered through all 3 hours. She's campaign director at Chief on the BBC. Rebecca, did you manage to go through all 3 hours?
I didn't watch all 3 hours, no.
So even you. And you're sodding obsessed with the BBC, and you didn't manage it. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I mean, they had Michael Prescott, who was the whistleblower, supposedly, who even he said, I don't think it's an institutionalised biased organisation. We had Sir Robbie Gibb, who apparently is an appalling human being because he was appointed by the Tories. It's fine when Labour appoints someone, but most of it was Samir Shah, the BBC chairman, saying he wouldn't resign and defending the BBC. I've got to be honest, I've never seen anybody who was less impressive than that man. How on earth he got that job and is remaining in that job is an absolute miracle, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's just absolute chaos and absolute like rats fighting in a sack really at the BBC at the moment. And they're just desperately trying to sort of search for some way out of this complete disaster that they find themselves in with President Trump threatening to sue them and what you. And there's just no explanation for what they've done. And yet they're trying desperately to sort of say, all of this good work that Tim Davie did. And we didn't, we edited the video to make it look like Trump, but actually, it wasn't really about that.
There was a plausible explanation for it. But what does that mean? Samir Shah said he basically begged Tim Davie not to resign as Director General. I mean, that's a poor judgment on his part already, isn't it?
Absolutely, exactly. And then we have them saying that, they took so long to apologise because they couldn't decide what they were apologising for. I mean, that's a 5-minute meeting, isn't it? If they've got to look at that footage and then come out.
Yeah. We did something that was editorially and journalistically completely ethically unacceptable. Yeah, I'm thinking that's what you'd apologise for. Bearing in mind, of course, on the Sunday, they already had the threat of legal action from Donald Trump, which we didn't know about for a few days. But again, they should have made that public. It's a public organisation. We're going to end up footing the bill for the lawyers or a payout or whatever happens. But I find it extraordinary that they were saying to a man and a woman, this is not a politically biased organisation. And everybody there was saying, no, I love the BBC, it's wonderful. It was fascinating how many of the MPs, the Labour MPs, thought it was a real gotcha, like, but you're friends with Robbie Gibb, aren't you? Or you're friends. I mean, the idea of all these people who've been political journalists and worked at the BBC and politicians didn't know each other and don't all go to each other's dinner parties. Who is she kidding, for goodness sake? That's how they all get the jobs. I mean, that's the thing. It's that cosy world. But I don't see how after that report and after all we know and all the reports on Gaza or on Trump, we're going back to Brexit, all their coverage, trans stuff, how could they possibly not know that they are institutionally biased? And isn't that part of the problem? They genuinely, doesn't matter how much evidence is in front of them, they don't get it.
Absolutely. And that's, as you were saying there, the kind of trying to use Robbie Gibb as this sort of lightning rod to distract away from this immense amount of chaos that they are being buried under. And it's just ridiculous. He's like one member of the board and he worked for Theresa May. I mean, she's... But
he's an open... It's an open thing. He's a political appointee in the same way that James Pennell, who'd been a literal cultural secretary for the Labour Party in the cabinet, was a political appointee.
Exactly. And so to turn around and sort of say that he is the cause of all this problem and it was actually his fault that these people resigned, and taking away from the fact that they absolutely should have resigned. If they sat there and said, this video is fine, they literally spliced together two parts of a speech that are so far apart to make it look like he was inciting violence.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the least of their acts of immoral acts in the last few years. But it was really interesting that Samir Shah said he's not resigning as chairman because he can't be out without a director general and a chairman at the same time. I'm thinking, by the looks of it, the utter chaos at the BBC, I don't think anyone would notice. They're without both forever.
Exactly. Who's going to apply for that job, really? I mean, this is really the beginning.
I'll do it. I'll do it. I can have the BBC sorted out and I can have it politically neutral. I'm not saying it, but I don't want it to be biased to my political views. I can have it politically neutral within a week. It would involve a heck of a lot of sackings.
You'd got the whole thing though, I think, wouldn't you? And it would take a long time to try and replace them all. But yeah, absolutely. I think the thing, as you've said, it comes back to the fact that the British people are having to pay for this, if they watch any live broadcast TV whatsoever. and we're just seeing an absolute mess play out. We've got the elected leader of our closest ally on a global scale saying, I'm going to sue you. You know, that's outrageous. And it's the British people that are having to pay for it.
Yeah. And didn't we have, by the way, didn't we have a woman who was looking after her son with a brain injury in hospital and didn't pay her BBC licence fee and is basically, you know, been taken to court? And not the first time, won't be the last time. British public have had enough of it. And is it something like 1 in 8 people no longer pay their licence fee, even though they carry on watching television?
Exactly, absolutely. And as you say there, it's mainly women and vulnerable people who are being prosecuted by the BBC. It's a huge amount of people. You know, it's only second only to car crimes that are brought through the courts, the non-payment of the BBC licence. In this day and age, it's just not acceptable to the BBC to be bullying people on the doorsteps.
I have a funny feeling more and more people are going to come over to your argument. I'd like the BBC to say, but just do the job properly. But Rebecca, it seems to me at this point, you know, I don't even know if they would know how to do that anymore. Rebecca Ryan, who bravely made it through most, but not all, because, wow, she's got a life and wanted to maintain her consciousness. Defund the BBC. Thank you very much indeed. 10:59 is the time. We're going to take a quick break, then this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. Fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thanks as always for your company, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. If you're on our app, got a little bit of naggy housekeeping for you. Look, you just got on a plane and someone's telling you, the mask will come down, put one on you, and then are your seatbelts fastened and the exits are here and here and here. Well, you need to listen because our talkTV app will be no more as of Monday. We can just pretend the whole thing never happened. But from Monday, the 1st of December, our talkTV app is on the move and it will become the Talk app, but it's not just metamorphosing in it, it's just going to move to a different app. So you need to download the Talk app right now on the App Store or Google Play or wherever else you get your apps, and you can find the app, and then that is where all of your favourite shows, your podcasts will be. There's only going to be one place to listen to and watch Talk on your phone. It won't be, as of Monday, on the talkTV app. It'll be on the Talk app. I mean, come on. It's pretty simple and straightforward. If you're able to download the talkTV app in the first place, or you, I don't know, did the Google, as my dad would say, then you'll be able to find it this time round. So like the last hour we did have a little few moments while you did that, so if you want we can just wait, we can just have a little wait, just talk among yourselves. I'll put the kettle on while you download the app. There, see, done it already, yeah? Already done it, brilliant. Thank you very much, we so appreciate it, say, however you are listening or watching. Coming up in this hour, we are going to be talking more about the budget. We are also going to be talking about, well, some good news on benefits. We're going to carry on spending, you know, an extra 15 billion quid on welfare benefits for people who, frankly, a lot of them do not need them, because we all want them to go to people who do need them. But one of the things they're not going to be able to do under the Motability scheme is to get themselves a BMW or a Mercedes car. OK, they often have to top up the money they get to do it, but no, not going to be eligible for that, because you've got that sort of top-up money. You probably don't need help from the taxpayer, do you? So we'll talk about that and more on Nigel Farage and what he did or did not say in the playground when he was at school back in the late 70s and early 80s. All that coming up. I want to hear your thoughts in particular. Look, a lot of you getting in touch about Nigel Farage, but your thoughts on the budget as well and the BBC. Whatever the topic, you know you're always welcome to get in touch. Give us a call. But what is your reaction in particular to Nigel Farage denying claims from former classmates that he had made racist and anti-Semitic comments to them at school some 50 years ago? He's dismissed his words as banter. Is that good enough for you? Does it have any bearing on the man he is now, or any bearing on whether or not he should be Prime Minister? Is this a political hit job? What's your reaction? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Delighted to say, still with me, locked the door so we couldn't leave. Editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Very good morning to you. Morning. I want to talk about the BBC in a few moments because you didn't get a chance to come in on our conversation with Rachel Ryan. But let's talk first of all about Nigel Farage, because that is where the audience, I mean, lots of calls, lots of messages on this. And these are allegations that were first made by Michael Crick, actually, on Channel 4, and then in a profile biography of Nigel Farage just a few years ago. And basically, it's allegations from various classmates. It's not just one person, it's quite a few different people who can remember things that they say happened to them, which Nigel Farage said to them, but also other people who saw things. Talk about him goose-stepping, doing the Sieg Heil Hitler salute, singing songs which actually were very common on the football terraces at the time, but some very unpleasant, songs, gas the Jews. I mean, unacceptable in any scenario at any time, I would suggest. And even if we allow for, different times, yeah, I don't think that would have been acceptable to most people at that time. Bullying people directly because of their race, telling people of colour to go home, here's the door, go home, and just numerous other remarks that are alleged. Other classmates say they didn't see or hear anything of the sort. A former teacher says he remembers there was a conversation, a letter written about why he shouldn't become a prefect because of his views. Another senior teacher saying, that he was, there wasn't any issue and he'd seen it, he didn't think there was a problem. Nigel Farage has, he's previously denied there was anything, this is rubbish, saying, and Reform Party saying this is all untrue. But he did a pulled interview at a Reform event yesterday. And let's have a listen to what the reporter asked him repeatedly and Nigel Farage's responses. Have a watch and listen to this.
At school, categorically on the record, you did not racially abuse fellow pupils.
I would never, ever do it in a hurtful or insulting way.
That's not quite the same as not doing it.
It's 49 years ago. It's 49 years ago.
What difference to the time?
Isn't it? Well, I just entered my teens. Can I remember everything that happened at school? No, I can't. Have I said things 50 years ago that you could interpret as being banter in a playground, that you could interpret in the modern light of day in some sort of way? Yes.
Well, that was what Nigel Farage had to say. I mean, a non-denial denial, if ever there was one, Tom Slater. I mean, he's basically saying, I think I paraphrase, yeah, I probably did say some pretty nasty things, but it wasn't directed at people. It was just, I mean, I'm guessing he was probably not a very nice person at school, but I think boys' private schools were probably not very nice places generally. I'm thinking he probably did say some of these things. I think enough people are saying they saw it or heard it. Does that matter? Do you believe that he did do that, and does it matter at all?
I think if we are holding politicians to account for what they said on the playground, we're having the wrong kind of conversation. These things are perfectly fine to report on. As you say, they've been around for quite a long time in the form of Michael Crick's reporting and then biography of Nigel Farage. Incidentally, it's worth noting that Michael Crick, no fan of Nigel Farage, comes to the conclusion in that book that these things probably happen, but he does not think Farage, the man, is racist.
He's quite categoric about that, isn't
There's
he?
a very, very, very clear, and it's repeated in much of the Guardian's re-dredging up of this report.
What is the statute of limitations? Because there's been allegations about what people said or did at university or things like that. What is the statute of limitations? Because let's face it, for the offensatrons, did you once cry when you saw a black person when you were in a nappy? I mean, genuinely, they are. Everything anyone said about, if you were opposed to gay marriage. I mean, Obama was opposed to gay marriage, when he was president. Well, that makes him a homophobe. Then I mean, the times have changed. So what is the cut-off point?
Well, I certainly think I think anyone could agree that what someone as a child or as a teenager has said on a playground, whether or not it was in jest, whether or not it was in malice, to be talking about that 50 years later seems excessive, it seems absurd.
Yeah.
I think we all know why this is being dredged up, and it's not because of a deep-seated concern that Nigel Farage himself in the here and now is some sort of sinister fascist. It's because of the fact that they have been leading in the polls for 150 on the trot, and therefore these stories are going to be more useful to newspapers and to politicians who want to take them down. Is what a young Nigel Farage is alleged to have said, and he seems to all but be confirming that he did say them in some form, despicable and wrong? Yes. Did a lot of young people at the time maybe indulge in that kind of bullying more so than we would see today? Almost certainly yes as well. Why is this a main political question of the day? I really couldn't tell you. It seems to
that's
me
the issue. Is it
politics.
relevant? And again, are people the same people? And again, as I said earlier, and I've said many times, I've known Nigel Farage for far too many years, and I've never heard him in jest, in inebriated states, ever say things that are remotely racist. And I say I was brought up in a family. I can categorically state. I was listening to this footage this morning, and I'm thinking, yeah, I could answer that question categorically. I did not say that. I have never said this. And the reason why I know that, so I get accused, of course, I'm accused of being a racist and a bigot, and a xenophobe, and goodness knows what else on air, on social media, is because I know I've never thought those things, because I wasn't raised like that. And my family would be appalled if I had ever come up with those things. I think boys' public schools in the late 70s and early 80s were probably really pretty nasty places. Doesn't excuse anything. And I don't think, certainly if I'd met someone who spoke like that to people at school, I would have picked up on it and said something. That would definitely have been unacceptable. But again, when you think about what was on the telly on a Saturday night in the 70s and early 80s, I'm sorry, most people, certainly most people in their 20s and 30s now would be absolutely flabbergasted if they saw what was considered to be mainstream humour then. What was said on the football terrace, again, totally unacceptable. My husband always talks about, when he first went to football matches, the abuse of black players was, the stuff that we now see only in sort of, Eastern European matches, because that's where it's happening still, is off the scale. The world has changed, thankfully. But I'm pretty darn sure that if he did say these things, that he has changed also. And again, what is the statute of limitations? And as I mentioned earlier, I find it very extraordinary that the people on the left who are absolutely convinced that murderers, rapists and even terrorists can be reformed and can change, and that we can't hold people based on, hold things against people based on what they've, even criminal actions that have seriously hurt people, but yet somehow they would hold against a politician they disagree with something that they said 50 years ago.
It's absurd. The double standards are there for everyone to see, and I think it's one of those things where there are enough issues going on in the country right now in terms of the economy, in terms of immigration. There's the international picture, which is looking more and more complicated by the day. Why are we spending time, not to dish your show on its running order, talking about what Nigel Farage said when he was 13 years old? That's the central allegation in this report. When he was 13 years old. This is absurd. You can walk and chew gum at the same time, is what he is alleged to have said. Horrific. Of course, he was a child who cares in the grand scheme of things.
And at the end of the day, also bearing in mind, if on the left you go around shouting that anyone who voted for Brexit is a racist, if you think that anyone who wants borders is a racist, if you think that anybody who thinks it's just not a good idea to import, let's face it, half of the third world to our country in low-paid, low-skilled jobs that aren't a benefit to the country here, and people who don't integrate and don't speak English is a racist, then when you do shout racist about things that, sound like they were pretty racist, no one listens to you anymore. And you did that to yourselves. Because actually, I grew up in a world where someone calling you racist, paedophile racist, they were like the two worst things you could be called. People literally shrug when you say racist. I read about a celebrity who's been accused of a racist, what did they actually say? Because the odds are it probably wasn't. It was probably a perfectly mainstream opinion that just doesn't pass muster with the Rocarati. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Get in touch. Love to hear what you have to say on this. Let's talk about the BBC before we go to the budget. We're going to talk a lot about the budget this week, aren't we? So, conversation we just had with Rebecca Ryan from Defund the BBC. Now, they want the BBC just, look, if you want to pay for the BBC, fine. Sign up like you do for Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever. You're not going to be forcing people under pain of paying a fine or being sent to prison to get you to pay for your BBC. The BBC is gifting them extra support right now. 3 hours of hearings yesterday. BBC utterly in disarray. Caroline Dinenage, the Culture Committee's chairman, this morning has said that the BBC doesn't appear to be in safe hands. They're all denying that there was any issue with any sort of bias and distortion and institutional bias. Even Michael Prescott, who wrote the original report that was leaked, the whistleblower says he didn't want it, he didn't leak it, he didn't want it to be leaked. It was sent to only 14 people, including people at Ofcom, and he thought that these were issues that could individually be dealt with. And we've got a chairman who says he's not going to go, who was unbelievably unimpressive in this question and answer session, and says that he tried to talk Tim Davie out of going. They haven't got a clue.
That was what came through. I didn't watch all of it. I watched the
Well, of course not, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to be awake now, because you'd literally be in a hospital in a coma. It was that boring.
Absolutely. And that was the thing, because it was kind of being billed as this is going to be kind of explosive, because the allegations that were levelled against them were so explosive, because that memo was so explosive. And what we ended up with was just a demonstration of kind of damp ineptitude, and I think that was almost more concerning. We all know the problems with the BBC in terms of the bias in its reporting. We all know about that outrageous edit in Panorama to make it look like Trump had directly incited violence, and we all know that where Israel and Gaza is concerned, it's basically been laundering Hamas propaganda for the best part of the past few years. But to see that people at the top, even those who are nominally concerned about this as an issue, are just sort of flapping around, not really knowing how to do with it. It was even worse than I realised by seeing what was going on
there's no doubt at all. You can see why they can't even make a decision. It's just been flagged to us that there was this awful edit in Panorama, but we're not quite sure. We want to apologise for us. It could take days. Good God. Unbelievable. Let's talk about the budget, because, we could have a very similar conversation, could we not? And Rachel Reeves is going to be speaking they usually speak 45 minutes, 55 minutes. My guess is it'll be a shorter speech, because there's an element where she'll just want to literally just get up and get down again. Although she may also know, despite what she told Labour MPs yesterday, this is her last budget. But it's going to feel like 3 hours to the rest of us. It really, really is. We know that, everyone's going to be here, whether, if you're lucky enough and you've worked hard enough to have a £2 million plus mansion, which basically is a terraced house in West London in an awful lot of areas, you're going to be paying an extra £4,500 in your council tax. If you've got you're using your savings to buy cash ISAs, likely that's going to go down from £10,000 tax-free to £20,000. Sorry, from £20,000 to £10,000. So hitting people who are just basically just trying to put some money away for the future. I thought we were encouraging people to do that. If you get a pay rise, you move up a little, get a little bit of a pay rise for working hard, as a promotion, to do a harder job, longer hours maybe, or maybe just you get a pay rise because inflation has gone sky high and you basically can't keep up with standard of living. You're going to be pushed into a higher tax bracket in all likelihood. You could be on, £50,000 and a bit of small change a year. That is by no means a high salary right now, and you'll be a higher rate taxpayer. And yet at the same time, we've got huge numbers of people, 5 million people working age on benefits, not being required to work, way, as a percentage of the working age population, way higher than any other European nation. Pensions are going to be hit. That we're going to encourage more people who aren't doing enough to support their own children to have more kids paid for by us with an extra £3,500 a year per child. £3,500 a year. This is a huge sum of money that people are going to get to basically not support their own children through their own hard efforts. But the Rachel Reeves says, anyone criticising her, well, it's all just misogyny and Labour MPs need to unite. And it's not a pick and mix budget. She told MPs last night, if you support some of the progressive measures, taxing the wealthy, then you should support all the measures. What do you make of all of that?
There's been a lot of metaphors thrown around for this budget. There was a smorgasbord, now we've got the pick and mix.
I love they're always talking about food. No one can afford to eat anymore.
No, exactly. It's just a mess, isn't it? That would be the simplest thing to say. I mean, this is a budget which has already gone through several iterations in the media and in the reporting. We were told it was going to be about busting manifesto commitments in really trying to work out, right, we need to properly sort out the public finances to make that fiscal headroom bigger, so we're going to have to put up income tax and people are just going to have to lump that and we'll make the case for it. The fact that it was almost, as one of your guests was saying earlier, it would be one thing if you've made that decision, you take the political hit for it and then you hope that by the time of the next election things have kind of calmed down. They took the political hit for it and then did a U-turn on it, and now they're just left with a kind of series of measures which are again going to be punishing to the particular parties that they're going to be targeted at, but are also not going to engender any kind of goodwill amongst the population. So I think it's quite clear that they're just out of their depth. It'd be one thing if they had a bad plan and were sticking to it, but they've got no plan and it changes every 3 days. Yeah. And
they don't seem to accidentally come across a good plan ever.
No, exactly. And I think a big part of the picture here is that the backbenches of the Labour Party are kind of running the country now, and that's a really bad place to be in, because I think especially when you're talking about people who have got any kind of sense of where the economy is at and what it needs to get growing again, they're the last people you would go to.
This is the thing. I always find it fascinating, who do you go to for advice? Don't go to people who've been divorced 5 times for marital advice. Don't go to people who've never started a business, never run a business, never even worked in the private sector to talk about how to grow the economy. I mean, you go to a cancer specialist if you've got cancer. You know what I mean? This urge is like, last year they put up taxes on businesses in terms of the jobs tax, national insurance, which was a breach of the manifesto promises. And they were told by every man and his dog that was going to hit growth, and it was also going to hit employees. We were told no ordinary working people, no, because businesses wouldn't be able to afford to give them a pay rise or to hire more people, or it would hurt working people by the fact that businesses would have extra costs because the threshold was lower at paying national insurance for employees, and they'd have to pay a higher rate, but they'd actually have to put up their prices. So everyone was hit across the board. It has a massive impact. Fewer people being hired, more people being laid off, people not getting the wage rises they need, businesses terrified of what's happening tomorrow and therefore not investing, not growing, not hiring people, worried about the employment's right bill as well. And so there we are, we've got fewer jobs, fewer pay rises, it's carrying on. And they're all going, well, no, it's fine. And what we should do now, after all those tax rises that made us not grow and have all those problems, the answer to that is more tax rises. I mean, taxing people more on their savings, taxing pensioners, taxing people who got a pay rise at work for doing the right thing or to cover inflation, taxing people because they bought a nice house for which they paid a fortune in stamp duty. I mean, often people have paid, 100 grand plus in stamp duty if they're buying these top-end houses. You don't buy one, I don't buy one, we're not buying them, that's not our market. But you know what? Those people already pay a shed load of tax. They're all paying 50% tax already. I just don't know how many more increases in tax people at every end of the market, whether it's people on, 12.5 grand, just getting over the threshold of paying tax, or whether it's people earning, £48,000 who get £3,000 pay rise and end up just on the margins paying a higher rate tax bracket, or whether it's high earners. I don't know how much they're going to take when public services aren't getting any better. You're not getting anything in return for it. They're not investing in infrastructure. They're not doing anything good, and most of that money is basically going on pensions triple lock and paying people who have working age to sit at home.
And the big missing piece of the puzzle in all of this is growth. I mean, when this government came in, they said they were going to have a laser-like focus on growth, and yet it's been pretty much stagnant, bumping around zero, for the longest time.
Oh, no, highest in the G7, we keep being told, by like a 0.0001%.
Exactly, we're told that we've won the tallest dwarf competition and we're supposed to be happy about it. But that's...
You're allowed to say dwarf anymore? I'm trying to keep
Please do phone in if the rules have changed. But it's one of those things where, again, questions about, tax rates and the size of the welfare state and whatever, they are important debates to be had. But, there are it's a lot of an easy discussion to make about, where should money be redistributed? Where is it important that we change around the incentives? Where is it that we try to, again, take from this area of the economy to try and feed this area of the economy? In the absence of a growing economy, that becomes a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like right now.
But it's not even that we're not growing the pie, we're making the pie smaller.
No, and it's one of those things where people also feel like they're being penalised for making the right decisions.
Saving, working.
Exactly. And that is
not having 6 kids.
That is a really toxic mix. I mean, the fact that the Labour Party, under Keir Starmer, but also a little bit before then, have worked for so long to make themselves not look like the party of economic incompetence or of soaking the rich. They seem to have just completely destroyed that in the space of 18 months.
Well, that's because you're a misogynist and a sexist. No, Rachel Reeves doubled down on this yesterday after an interview in the FT, told MPs that there was a lot of misogyny.
No, exactly, which is the last, sort of refuge of the inept politician, is to reach for any of those isms. And you see Labour Party politicians do it, you see politicians across the piece do it, which is that you are being held to account for what a terrible job you've made of it, to turn around and to double down those accusations. I thought it was particularly chilling because I thought if this was just a lame line put out by a spinner, you think, oh, that's embarrassing. Why are they going to that? The fact that Rachel Reeves is continuing to accuse people of sexism, I think suggests that she actually believes it, which suggests that she's an even more immature individual than we realise.
Also, if you don't want to have people thinking sexist things about you, don't burst into tears in the House of Commons on the front bench. You embarrassment of a frontline politician, Rachel Reeves. I'm sorry, that was embarrassing. And no, I did not feel an ounce of sympathy for her. It was an absolute abject embarrassment that she did that. And we know the reaction to a man or a woman doing the same thing, very different. Yeah, misogyny, my backside. But there we are. 11:25 is the time. Just some breaking news for you. Actually, the last been seeing some of the pictures for a little while now. But 150 firefighters currently tackling a fire which has broken out at a warehouse in West London. There were huge explosions heard by residents. 3/4 of the structure, a 2-storey building on Bridge Road in Southall, is alight. And fire and police were called at 5 to 9 this morning. It's a warehouse and retail space. 25 fire engines at the scene. Large amount of smoke. Residents in the local area being told to keep doors and windows closed. Traffic in the area, of course, expected. The cause of the fire so far unknown, but explosions heard by local people. I'll keep you up to date on all of that. 11:26 is the time. I'm going to take your calls up next. After that, we're going to be talking to Sacha Lord. He was a Labour donor. He was a nighttime economy czar for Manchester. But what does he make of what's going to come in the budget, bearing in mind that hospitality, which he was very much involved in, has been absolutely broken by what's happened over the last few years and is crying out for help from the government, especially as well. A fifth of the people in this country work in hospitality. It might be a good idea to keep that industry afloat, eh? Well, we'll find out what he thinks about that, and we'll find out what you think, particularly about Nigel Farage and his accusations of racism while he was at school some 50 years ago. That's all coming up next. This is Talk.
They will never ever...
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
They will never... Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:30 is the time. Let's go straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. As usual, I'm running late because we've been yapping too much. It's my fault, sorry. Let's go to Peter, who is in Surrey, wants to talk about those comments that Nigel Farage did or did not say when he was in the playground way back when. What do you make of them, Peter?
Well, I think they're stooping to very new lows. I think somebody of Farage's age...
Peter, I'm going to stop you, my love. I'm going to try and get you on a better line. I'm going to go to another call and come back to you, but it's such a fuzzy line. I'm so sorry. Let's go to Laura Jane, who is in Hampshire. Hi, Laura Jane.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
Have we forgotten that Starmer went to a communist camp in his youth several times? So, is he a communist?
And by the way, that was when he was already an adult.
Exactly. So, in inverted commas, Starmer, the communist, wouldn't want to.
I mean, it would explain. It would explain a lot.
It would, wouldn't it? And also, I would not have joined a party that supports Nazi anything to do with the Nazis. I do have Jewish ancestry, and I certainly would not have done that. And also, that's the Conservative Party chairman. I feel that he should go for those remarks.
This is Kevin Hollenrake for this retweet. It's a badge. It's a black and gold sort of badge on a football shirt, sort of limited edition for new members of the Reform Party or something, isn't it? Yeah. And he basically likened it to a Nazi badge. I mean, genuinely absurd and frankly childish, and I would say offensive as well.
The thing is I did say ages ago that party politics was going to get dirty because the other parties are much more scared, and as they go on closer to the election, this is going to get worse. I'm afraid this is the least of the things.
Do you think any of it lands a glove on Nigel Farage, given that he was called racist simply for supporting Brexit?
Goodness me, I mean, within families, my own included, one of them certainly was a teenager, and at the time I remember some of the things he said, and I wouldn't repeat them on the radio.
Please don't.
And, you know, quite frankly, young people in some of these private schools, especially, as you said, single sex, goodness me, what they said. And that's part of growing up. You say things, he may well have said those things. I mean, he was probably a very white, right-wing young man from the word go. So what? As we see, Starmer was very left-wing / communist from the word get-go.
They can't have it both ways. Yeah,
you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, but also it is a point that Nigel Farage, lots of people who criticise him on the right are people he's thrown them out of his parties because of racism. I mean, he's been very, very clear on that. Really appreciate that call, Laura Jane. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're struggling to get Peter back up on a better line. Maybe we can get him on a bit later in the show. I do want to hear what he has to say, but Paul is on the line in Cardiff. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Julia.
Hello. What do you want to say, my darling?
Well, it's just pathetic how politics are going now, and the two main parties are scared stiff of.
They are.
And that's why they're digging up as much dirt as they can, and whoever they can get to dig up the dirt to speak to as well. And the other thing you said earlier on about the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the programs that were on the telly. I mean. They wouldn't be anywhere. You wouldn't be allowed anything on the television like that now.
A very, very different time. This is so true, Paul. Thank you for that. Those of us who are a bit longer in the tooth remember all this. 11:34 is the time. Up next, we are going to talk to a former Labour Party donor, Sacha Lord. He's also Andy Burnham's a former nighttime economy advisor for Greater Manchester about what on earth he's expecting to hear in tomorrow's budget. Put it this way, I don't think he's optimistic for the hospitality sector. That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:36 is the time. Tom Slater is still with me, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and we've been talking about the budget. Let's get the views of somebody, very much concerned about how the budget's going to impact business, but particularly the hospitality sector. Sacha Lord is a former Labour Party donor, very much emphasis on the former there, and he was also a former nighttime economy advisor for Greater Manchester to Andy Burnham, and joins us. Good morning to you, Sacha.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, you've been involved in setting up festivals, nightclubs, and we've had some good nights out, have we not, as a result? As I know you just mentioned to my producer about the last time we saw each other, but we'll come to that. But I mean, people talk about the nighttime economy and they talk about hospitality, and they're very casual about it. And as we discussed again and again every single day on my show during lockdown, it's like it is one of the major employers in this country. It's a huge backbone, not just of our economy, but also of our local communities, local pubs, local cafes, restaurants and the like. What hope do you have that Rachel Reeves, who's not got a very strong track record on helping business, given her last budget, is going to actually help those businesses that you care so much about?
I don't have any hope whatsoever, to be honest, Julia. It's just not going to happen. What she did at the last budget by raising the national insurance crucified my industry. You know, you're right, we're the fifth biggest industry in the whole of the UK. We're the third largest employer. Since her last budget, we've lost 110,000 jobs in hospitality. And when you drill down into that, into the minutiae, the vast majority of those jobs are for young people growing up who maybe want to support going through college with a Saturday job in a pub or university. Those jobs are lost. And, you know, you're right, Julia. I was a Labour Party member. I was a Labour Party donor. Back, and I had a look at this, I checked it. Back in 2022, I tweeted, I've just become a Labour Party member. One of the first comments below that was actually yourself. You just said, good luck with that. And actually, do you know what? It's proven true. And again, I was at the manifesto launch last year, Julia. It was 13th of June. And I stood there in this incredible building called Noma in Manchester. Yeah. The whole of the shadow cabinet were there. The Chancellor was there. The now PM was there. And the Chancellor stood and she said, I am the Chancellor of Business. I'm the Chancellor of Growth. And we were all became very excited about this. And it is simply just not the case. Hospitality...
Did she lie?
She did not tell the truth. And I am sick to death of her turning around and blaming everybody else apart from herself. And yes, there were 14, 15 years of mismanagement under the Tories. There were. But she's come in now. She's had long enough. And she's turning her back on this sector.
Now, are you just being a misogynist? Because apparently that's what people are when they criticise the Chancellor, because she's the first female Chancellor. Apparently they keep going on about it.
I've seen this, mansplaining. How pathetic is that? I mean, for God's sake, you know, can we not say what we honestly think? You know, I had a very, very similar thing when I was advisor for Andy Burnham in Manchester. I had a counterpart down in London, and the nights are...
The useless one?
You said that.
Well, she was utterly... What was her name? Utterly useless, barely at work.
Well, you know, and I used to call it out, and that was the thing. I was a misogynist, and it was... Come on, let's all grow up. It's not playground stuff. And the Chancellor has to take some responsibility now. And you know, it feels to me a very awkward budget that's coming tomorrow, because I don't think this is a budget to save the country. I think this is a budget to save two jobs, and those two jobs are the PM and the Chancellor.
Well, that's the worry. It's going to save two jobs at the expense of lots of others. And when we're told constantly, you know, we're going to be hitting savers, going to be hitting people who, again, getting dragged. And Tories did this as well. Lots of parties have done this. These so-called stealth taxes, where the thresholds on which you pay a higher rate of tax, whether it's 20%, 40%, or 45%, they get frozen, and basically more and more people who do not highly paid, top-notch jobs, but completely average, normal jobs, then get pulled into higher rate taxes. And a lot of people say that's what's going to happen with the mansion tax. But most of us don't own a £2 million house. Goodness me, most people can't dream of owning a £2 million house. But yeah, one day house prices will go up enough that actually an awful lot of people will end up owning a house that's much more expensive. But also, they'll lower it. There'll be a higher rate of tax, and it will be on lower value properties, and more people. And the taxes keep going up, but we never seem to have something to show for it.
Never. I mean, you know, I'm staying in my lane on this, and I can tell you I've been in this industry for 30 years, Julia. I have never known, and this includes COVID period as well, where we used to talk quite a lot during that period. I've never known the industry so demoralised as it is now. And I had a conversation with a landlord who had a pub in Coventry, I won't mention it, and in January he's going to hand his keys back. But the worst thing is, the heartbreaking thing is, he's lost his home. He brought his kids up in that pub. They lived up the pub. Said not just lost the business, you know, his finances are in tatters. His mental health's in tatters. His relationships in tatters. And there's a bigger picture to this. Pubs are not just about a pint.
Exactly.
You know, they're a part of our social fabric. And, you know, when you look at this now, this is just to put something into perspective for your listeners. By the time you've paid for your pint, which on average is £6.50 in Manchester, I'm hearing in London now is anything between £7.50 and £8. By the time you've paid your alcohol duty, your VAT, you've paid for the beer itself, you paid for the staff, the average profit on a pint in the UK is 12p. It's untenable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absurd. And people are drinking at home. And I know, you know, I've got a teenager. They all drink at home. They do prees, and they'll drink at home. They're not going out, and the pubs are dying. And you know, and the thing is, and then everyone moans about their kids sitting at home. And actually, we want them out and about and being social, meeting new people, having fun together, and having a life. It is desperate. I mean, in terms of what we're expecting to hear tomorrow. What would you like to hear? What could the Chancellor announce tomorrow that would make a difference to jobs in the sector you care about?
So if I was the Chancellor, I would introduce 3 things tomorrow. And these things, by the way, won't happen. But firstly, let's reduce VAT. Actually, Rishi Sunak did this coming out of lockdown. It was incredible. It saved
for everybody across the board, or just on in hospitality?
It's a hospitality-specific sector VAT, the same as they have in Europe. Europe between 7 and 8% at the moment. We're obviously 20%. So reduce it by 5, just bring it down to 15%. That would give enough headway. I'd also reverse the ridiculous national insurance increase that were introduced last year. And the final thing is business rates reform. Now, we know that's coming, and that's probably going to be what she's going to call her rabbit out of the hat tomorrow. But that was announced months and months ago. We know that's already been agreed. That will probably be welcome for small venues like pubs, cafes, family-run restaurants. But actually those bigger, larger scale venues like nightclubs, for example, that could be quite crippling.
Yeah, absolutely. You worked for Andy Burnham. I say last time I saw you was in Manchester, and Angela Rayner joined us. At a club night. I mean, I put out a photo of it at the time, and and so what you like about Angela Rayner, she's fun on a night out. I can't say we're best buddies, but certainly not politically. Do you think that no one seems to think Keir Starmer's doing a very good job, least of all actually Labour Party members, or indeed Labour MPs right now. Do you think either Andy Burnham, who many are touting as a future leader but isn't an MP yet, or Angela Rayner, the former Deputy Prime Minister, who had to resign over not paying her stamp duty and apparently still hasn't paid it? But do you think either of those people would make a better Prime Minister?
Well, you'd have to ask them, but looking
No, I'm asking you.
Well, OK, I'll read between the lines. Greater Manchester, it was announced last week, is performing economically better than any other city region in the whole of the UK. We are bouncing. Our nightlife is bouncing at the moment. People are looking at Greater Manchester as a model. It is working. Last week it was announced that we're going to have £1 billion invested, not just in the city centre, but all the boroughs across Greater Manchester. We have 10 boroughs in Greater Manchester. So things are working, things are right. I look at the Labour Party at the moment and things aren't working at the top. I don't think, I think it's going to be catastrophic for them come May at the local elections. Yep. And I know so many hard-working Labour councillors in Greater Manchester who've been doing fantastic jobs. And through no fault of theirs, Julia, they're going to lose their jobs come May. I know that's going to happen, and I feel very sorry for them. So Yeah, Greater Manchester is working. It's a good model.
I think he's given us his answer. Yes, he thinks Andy Burnham would be better Prime Minister. I think we can paraphrase. Sacha Lord, great to hear from you. Former Labour Party donor and former nighttime economy advisor for Greater Manchester to Andy Burnham. Tom Slater, listening to all of that, what do you make of it?
I'm not entirely sure Andy Burnham would make a better Prime Minister. I think the question at the moment is who...
He's further to the left.
No, exactly. Well, he's decided that he is now. I mean, that's the thing about Andy Burnham, is that he's...
Flip-flop Andy, as he was known in two leadership contests.
This is a man, he was a new Labourite, then he was a kind of born-again left-winger. Lord knows where he is now with his sort of Manchester brand of Labour that he wants to revive. I mean, that's one thing that the Labour Party do have to reckon with, is that as terrible as the current shower at the top of the Labour Party are, and they are terrible, we can all see that, who is going to replace them? Andy Burnham, again, tried to do this putsch earlier this year, failed miserably. You've got Wes Streeting, who is a great media performer. Unlike Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, he at least appears to have a pulse when he's on television. But do we really think he's got the answers to the questions that...
Well, certainly not when it comes to puberty blockers for kids, as we were discussing yesterday. I think he should be in prison for that, rather than actually be Prime Minister. So
it's not purely that Keir Starmer can't lead the Labour Party.
It's not a personnel issue.
Well, it is in a very deep sense, and it's not simply that Rachel Reeves can't run the economy. It's that it's not obvious that anyone in that party is anywhere near capable of actually grasping the moment that we find ourselves in.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we're going to find out what my next guest thinks about Nigel Farage, saying, look, stuff he may or may not have said in the playground back in the late 70s and 80s, some 50 years ago, was, well, it was just playground banter. Well, was it? Does it have any bearing on whether or not he should be our next Prime Minister? This is Talk, We Out the Home of Common Sense.
People smugglers are handing out a cheat manual to migrants on how to lie to claim asylum in the UK. It sets out a step-by-step guide in Arabic on how to pretend to be from the persecuted Bedouin minority, a stateless tribe from Kuwait.
How many Muslim asylum seekers do you ever see seeking asylum in a Muslim country?
Yeah.
It's always baffled me that all these Muslims want to come to a Christian country.
Big news coming this
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Coming up after midday, we're going to be talking to Jacob Rees-Mogg, which usually gets fun and lively. Right now, let's talk to Liz Webster. She's a commentator and also, let's face it, an anti-Brexit campaigner about what Nigel Farage did or did not say when he was in the playground at school some 50 years ago and whether it matters. Good morning to you, Liz.
Hello, Julia. How are you doing?
Very well indeed. Thank you very much for joining me. Well, look, we've already played a couple of times this clip of Nigel Farage, this pooled clip where, after Reform officials had said denied any and all of the allegations, was completely untrue that he had said racist and anti-Semitic things to fellow pupils when he was at Dulwich College in South London back in his teenage years, as he points out, some 50 years ago. He has now said, "I would never ever do it in a hurtful or insulting way." And he says, and he does say, you can't remember everything that happened. He said, have I said things 50 years ago that you could interpret as being banter in a playground, that you could interpret in the modern light of day in some sort of way? Yes, i.e., yeah. It does sound like he may or may not have racially abused some fellow students. How much, if at all, does this matter?
Well, I don't think it really does matter, actually, what happened then. What matters is the here and now. And when we're here collectively as a country and we're deciding who is going to be the biggest decision maker, then we have to think about what are the decisions that they're going to make, and are they the best person to make those decisions? So whatever we did when we were kids, of course, we all did naughty things. I'm
very, very sure that I've never racially abused a classmate or anyone else. I'm 100% sure about that. So does it matter if he did, even if he says he didn't necessarily? We were talking about goose stepping, telling a Jewish person that the Jews telling someone who of Asian heritage that go back home, various other things, Kyles, goose stepping in the playground, and he says it's all just fun or denies it. Some people say it happened, some people say it didn't happen. Are you saying that doesn't matter at all and has no bearing on the man right now? Because I'm quite surprised that you, from your background, would be saying that.
Well, I think instead of having a debate about whether it matters, he's not saying I didn't do it. So there's no debate around that. He did it, it happened, and he is where he is, and he is here, hoping to get, he says he's hoping to get into number 10. And so the decision is for us as a collective nation to decide if he is the right person to do that.
Do you think he is?
So I personally look at Nigel's decisions in recent times. And when we particularly look in that at Brexit is what really has given him power. And he's benefited enormously from Brexit.
How has he benefited?
Because he was on the fringe of politics. And from the moment that the referendum actually won, Nigel became centre stage of our politics. I know he's not been in number 10, but he's been central to everything that has been going on in our politics because Brexit has been such an enormous issue.
Wait a minute, so somebody who pushed an idea for years and then managed to get promises of referendum from the then Prime Minister, David Cameron, and then it happened and he won it, you're saying he benefited from it? I mean, I would say the country benefited from it.
Well, Julia, I'm not going to go into that. I'm a farmer, and all of us farmers, we were split on Brexit, but we can all sit together and actually now agree that Brexit has been a disaster.
Well, you want your EU subsidies, but there's no reason why we couldn't have given that money directly to farmers. That's a decision by government. It's nothing to do with Brexit.
But the trade deals. The trade deals are much worse than the subsidies because, that we're being undercut and all of the other things.
Oh, well, you'd think your friends in Europe would have given a better trade deal, then wouldn't you, given how lovely they are and how much you want to be ruled by them? But honestly, you're saying he benefited from it.
But ultimately, it comes back to the promises. People voted for Brexit thinking that it was going to stop immigration. It's gone up.
No, they voted for... No, actually, that's not the main reason people voted for Brexit. There's been extensive research into this.
I know. But
no, so you just said something. No, some people voted for it to... I mean, I've voted for them to control our borders, absolutely. Actually, most people, it was about national sovereignty and the right for us to dictate how we wanted our country to be run and not from our bureaucrats.
Anyway,
look,
but
you say that casually. You just said something that's untrue.
Julia, you've got me on here to talk to you about Nigel. And, I've met Nigel loads of times and I like him. He's a fantastic guy to have some good banter with. So from me personally, whatever he did, if he did do some bad things when he was a child at school, it was he's the same age as me. It was a different world. There were loads of, the atmosphere was very different around race then. But I think what we have to look at is in the here and now. Racism is dangerous. And I personally know this. My son is a victim of a racist attack. He was attacked by a gang of Asians. 13 of them were convicted. He was hit on the head 7 times with a hammer. Now, what I would say to people about racism is that it comes in and it's tribal and it divides us. And if we're divided, then you don't know who is going to be hurt. And my son was the person that was hurt because the school didn't manage racism.
Okay, so I'm very sorry what happened to your son.
With my son being attacked.
That's awful what happened.
If he had got racism happening, and if it's allowed to happen, and if it's been seen as being okay, then we are all in more danger.
So what's that got to do with Nigel?
Racism has increased since the Brexit referendum, particularly the poster when he came out with it, and there have been the statistics.
Talking about the poster, about the picture of. Hold on a minute.
We've seen racial attacks happen more.
Liz, I don't think there is evidence actually that racism has increased since Brexit. There's evidence of more reports of certain kinds of racism, but again, we've also changed how we judge something as racist or not. We've got the non-crime hate incidents. Anti-Semitism has certainly increased, since October 7th attack. But I mean, there's apparently been an increase in attacks on Muslims as well. But actually, as a general, in terms of the polling, there is less. Our country is one of the least racist in the world. So we're so short on time.
Julia, but we have got immigration. Xenophobia is the highest in this country now, right now.
No, but arguing against people coming to this country en masse isn't xenophobia.
And Brexit opened the door to more people coming here.
Well, it didn't. No, it didn't. It was the political choice by Boris Johnson.
It was the Australian point system.
Yes, but that doesn't open the door to more people coming here.
Which liberalised immigration. That is what caused more of it. And we left the Dublin Convention, which meant that we lost control of the asylum seeker route, which meant more come here. And so ultimately, the decisions made by Nigel, I think, since he's been in the public frame...
Nigel Farage didn't make any of those decisions. He's not been in power. He wasn't even an MP until less than a year.
He wanted Brexit and he wanted to leave the Dublin Convention.
I don't think we have left the Dublin Convention.
All of those things. We have with Brexit. It was made. That decision was made.
Have we left the Dublin Convention? I think we've left certain of the rules about look, we weren't returning people anyway. Liz, I think we're going round and round. Are you saying it's not Nigel as a child? It's not a teenager. It's Nigel now, and because of Brexit, you think that makes him. That is what makes, yes or no, that's what makes him unfit to be Prime Minister.
I look at it through farming, Julia.
Okay,
I've
got 10 seconds left.
A disaster, and that's Brexit.
Right. I'm not entirely sure I understood an argument there, but I'm not entirely sure there was a coherent argument there, with all due respect, Liz. She's an anti-Brexit campaigner, as I think you've heard, but doesn't think that what Nigel did or said in his teenage years matters, which is certainly what you're saying on the phones, but it's what he is now that's the problem. Love to hear your thoughts and all that. Rees-Mogg is up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past 12 is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I can't wait to hear more from you on the phone lines. A lot of you getting in touch about Nigel Farage and about those comments that did or did not get said during in the playground when he was in his teenage years. And it's fascinating. Actually, our last guest, who definitely not a fan of Nigel Farage, she thinks he's a problem in the here and now, doesn't have an issue with what was or was not said in the playground. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Lots of you getting in touch, and your thoughts on the budget. We're going to be talking about both topics with a former Cabinet Minister for the Conservatives, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, live from College Green in just a few moments' time. We're going to be talking more about the budget, and of course we'll be talking about that an awful lot tomorrow. We're also going to be talking about welfare claimants. 5 billion people of working age being paid not to work. But amazing, wonderfully, the Motability scheme, you know, you hand out for your free car, which you may need because you've got tennis elbow or something. Apparently, disability claimants are not going to be allowed to lease a BMW or a Mercedes or other top-of-the-range cars under that scheme, because basically you could get this money from that scheme and then you just add on a load of money and then you can get a better car. But you know, if you've got that sort of money, should we really be subsidising you having a car? That is the big question. We're also going to be talking about what's going on in Ukraine. Trump and Zelensky are going to negotiate the remainder of a peace deal for Ukraine following initial talks. The US and Ukrainian officials agreed on a new 19-point plan, rather different from the 28-point plan, which basically, to all intents and purposes, the Kremlin wrote for Donald Trump. But the US and Ukrainian presidents are going to decide the most politically sensitive decisions. We shall see whether that ends up being a peace plan or a surrender plan. We're also going to be talking to an artist whose exhibition featuring Union flags has been cancelled by a Labour-run council in Brighton because it fears it might offend or scare people. Yeah, really. Anyway, we will talk to the artist about that. Lots more coming up. Delighted to say that joining me throughout the show is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just a reminder also, if you're watching us or listening to us on the talkTV app, that app is going to cease to exist. It's going to be an X app. It's going to be dead, defunct. Monty Python style as of next Monday, which is the 1st of December. Instead, you need to switch to our new app, the Talk app, and just download that. Very, very easy. Just go to App Store or Google Play. Do it right now. Download it. You've got it there. And then when your talkTV app doesn't exist on Monday, you've already got the app there, so you can watch and listen to us there. Also, as I say, it is a number to get in touch about anything we are talking about, but in particular about Nigel Farage denying claims from former classmates at Dulwich College, a private school in South London, that he made racist and anti-Semitic comments to them at school some 50 years ago. He dismissed his words as playground banter. What's your reaction to that? Does any of it have any bearing on whether or not he's fit to be Prime Minister or not? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Texts, of course, cost one standard network rate message, and messages on X are, of course, free. Tom Slater, we've talked to you about this quite a lot, but it's interesting talking to our last guest, Liz Webster. I'm quite encouraged that she doesn't think that someone said, 50 years ago when they were a kid, should have you bearing. But she's obviously got issues with Nigel Farage because he's one of those evil, awful people who supports Brexit, which is, of course, the worst thing that ever happened to us. And that's what the nice people think. And she's got the argument about farming, but she's the argument, but she says that we live in a divided country. Brexit has made racism and division much worse. And that's the problem with Nigel Farage and his policies, rather than something he did or did not say to a classmate or 5 classmates or wherever it was back in the 1970s or 80s. What do you make of that argument?
I think it's turning the truth on its head. I think the main thing that was divisive about Brexit for the years that we were fighting and arguing over it was the refusal to implement it and move on.
Thank you.
That's number one.
What? To actually recognise the largest democratic vote for anything ever in this country?
Exactly.
Calling everybody who voted the other way from you stupid or racist or both?
Exactly. I mean, it's when you think about it...
Can we say hi from Gammons everywhere? Hello.
And yet, as soon as you said something as simple as I would like that vote that we all agreed would take place to be respected. You were the one who was supposedly being divisive and hateful and so on and so forth.
I'm still amazed that we didn't, and I did actually Google pitchforks, that we did not end up storming Parliament.
I mean,
I never support violence in a democracy, but if you actually don't allow a democratic vote to go ahead deliberately because you didn't agree with the result, it's like me saying, no, I will not allow Keir Starmer to become Prime Minister. He won fair and square.
It was the most outrageous anti-democratic backlash, since everyone got the franchise. I mean, it was so clear cut. It's amazing that so many politicians, including Keir Starmer, have got away with their role.
I've always said he's unfit for public office because of that. Always.
And the other thing that talk about Brexit and divisiveness, the refusal to implement Brexit in such a way that reflected what the voters were concerned about has also led to a lot of division and divisiveness. The fact that we've had first a Conservative government and now a Labour government double down on mass immigration and failing to take seriously illegal migration. These were, in their own way, core issues of the Brexit vote, taking back control. And the failure to deal with those problems has genuinely divided the country.
And again, when someone like Boris Johnson says, let's get Brexit done and let's take back control, led the Leave campaign, led the Tories when they got the one in 2019, and the whole argument then was very clear that we are going to take back control, we're going to be able to get Brexit done, and then we can control our borders. And then he went, oh, I know what, let's invite a couple more million people in and keep it on the. No one will notice. We'll just invite a load of people because we didn't think it was a good idea to have mass immigration from both the wider world and particularly from Europe, are totally unlimited. But yeah, we can't have all those people from Europe, although they all stayed anyway, and quite rightly, they had every right to do so. That's part of the deal. But then inviting, 1 million plus more from further afield, that wasn't what people voted for, and he knew it.
No, exactly, and it's another indication of why the voters are always far ahead of the politicians, because all of the people in the media, in politics, who are currently bemoaning how divisive everything has become, if they'd have listened to what people said at that referendum, if they'd listened to what people had been saying at every election over the course of the past 20 or so years.
And what they themselves said to the voter. But again, if there had been, I've always said, 2016, every single political party has said, right, we don't agree with it, but we're absolutely going to get behind it, and they're absolutely let's get the best Brexit till we can. They didn't go sort of, sneaky over to the Brussels to try and undermine the deal. Philip Hammond, the actual Chancellor of the Exchequer, did just that. I mean, absolute traitors. Genuinely should be prosecuted for being a traitor, for doing that, and all the other people like the Shadow Brexit Secretary, as was then Keir Starmer. If they hadn't done that and undermined that and made it so hard that people went, let's just take any deal, let's just get any deal, and the civil servants hadn't done that, we could have got a much better deal. We would have had the power and we would have had to be a united country, and none of this needed to have happened.
And it's also worth remembering that a lot of the issues that we talk about as divisive aren't actually that divisive in the country. I mean, there's been a very strong majority.
Like the trans issue.
Exactly.
And
immigration as well. It's a very small proportion, tiny proportion of the country who would support net migration in the figures that we've seen in recent years.
And most of them are in Parliament.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where, most Labour voters, most Remainers realise that these are issues. It's just the people who are at the top of politics who don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk to someone next who has been at the top of politics. Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. He joins us right now. He's a former Conservative government minister, of course. Good afternoon to you, Sir Jake.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello. I appreciate you joining us. It's interesting, actually, you're standing in College Green. We've just been talking about Nigel Farage and this claim that it was playground banter when he's accused by a number of people he was at school with of racial slurs and lots of comments and goose stepping and saying he supported Hitler and goodness knows what. Now he has sort of denied the generality and the specifics, but doesn't deny. He says, I don't remember everything necessarily. Now we've just had a guest on who was saying, look, they don't have an issue with what was said 50 years ago, whether he denies it or not. They have an issue with the divisiveness that they believe that as an anti-Brexiteer that Nigel Farage brings to the country now. What do you, as someone from a different political party, but a colleague of his at a station, but also as a leading Brexiteer, what do you make of that criticism?
Oh, it's utterly silly, and whoever you had on should listen to the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who I thought made a very powerful point in the House of Commons last week when she said she'd been at the sharp end of very unpleasant racism, and she thought the way to have a settled country at ease with itself was to control our borders. So you don't need to listen to me as a Conservative figure who's broadly sympathetic to Nigel. Listen to the Socialist Home Secretary, who puts it really clearly and extremely powerfully. She actually used foul language to the shock of her mother in the chamber of the House of Commons, which I thought reinforced her point. I for once, thought that the language was suitable.
Well, indeed. I mean, in terms of the language and the things that Nigel Farage is supposed to have said in the playground at Dulwich College some 50-odd years ago. Look, I mean, you know, you're a little bit younger than me, a little bit younger than him. He's 60 now. Look, the world was a very different place in the 70s and 80s, and you know, I can say categorically, I know I've never said anything racist to anybody or thought it was racist, but his kind of non-denial. Does that matter? Does that make him unfit for office, or is it irrelevant?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't mislead your viewers and listeners, because we were at Oxford together, and you're one of my younger friends.
You are a bit younger than me.
We can't have this idea. Well, no one would believe it by looking at us, I fear. Anyway, I think 6 children that have been very ageing. Look, like you, I haven't said the sort of things that Nigel has been accused of, but are we to hold people for things that they may or may not have said when they were very young? At what point do you cut it off? I think this is silly muckraking. I don't believe that Nigel Farage is a racist. I don't believe he's an anti-Semite. Indeed, he has stood up for Israel consistently. And if he said silly things when he was a child, well, when I was a child, I spake as a child, and now I've put away childish things.
So it's irrelevant now to this year. Well, let's talk about the stuff that is definitely relevant to, you know, everyone, rich or poor, working, not working, is what's going to happen in the budget tomorrow. Rachel Reeves has told Labour MPs last night that not only carrying on her comments to the Financial Times at the weekend, that criticism of her is often misogynistic, apparently, as opposed to just comments about her own abject incompetence, but she said this isn't a pick and mix budget. They have to agree to things as a whole, as package, but that it will overall, it will be progressive. Is she right?
Well, I think both statements are overweeningly arrogant. This idea that any criticism of her is because she's a woman rather than because she's incompetent is the arrogance of office. And saying to Parliament a budget is a done deal, you can't question it, is again arrogant. MPs are there to question, to hold to account, to vote through individual measures, to say I agree with this measure but not with that measure. I think it's just stunning arrogance of an out-of-touch government and an out-of-touch Chancellor.
You say out of touch. You know, there are a lot of people perhaps who live in. I mean, I'm going to take a punt that you may or may not own a property worth more than the £2 million sum that a mansion tax is going to apply to, an extra £4.5 grand a year on council tax on average for people who own those sorts of properties. Is that a chancellor who is out of touch, or should those people pay more tax?
Well, out of touch is freezing thresholds again. Seems to me really outrageous that people who are just into tax paying will be worse off, will have their thresholds frozen to pay for people on benefits to get an inflation increase.
But the last
Once
Tory
again, the Labour
did
Party
that.
is backing...
The last Tory government did
I
that.
agree,
They're just
and I
carrying
didn't
it on
think...
for another 2 more years.
I didn't think... Well, 2 more years is extremely expensive, and they said they wouldn't. Last year, Rachel Reeves said this was a terrible thing to do. This year, she's going to do it.
Yeah.
I think she was right last year. It's a terrible thing to do. But what is particularly unfair is that working people who aren't earning great salaries, people on the basic rate of tax, are going to lose hundreds of pounds because of this, whilst people who aren't working, who they pay for, are going to get an inflation-linked increase. That seems to me absolutely wrong. That's what I mean by out of touch. Yeah. In terms of property taxes, she's just killing off the property market, meaning all the rich people are fleeing, taking money out of this economy, the great sucking sound of wealth going to Dubai. If that's how she wants to run the economy, I think it's a mistake. But it's not those particular people that one has the sympathy for. It's the people on low earnings who are going to be made markedly worse off.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. This is going to be a tax, a budget which it would appear isn't going to please anyone at all. Businesses certainly absolutely quaking in their books that more national insurance rises or other taxes are going to make life difficult for them. They're worried about the employment rights, which mean they typically will employ fewer people, which will hit everybody. But everybody, whether they're on the lowest incomes or others, seems to be worried, as you say, apart from people on welfare. And there is certainly increased anger now from among the working public, and we've seen the polling saying they would rather not have tax rises, they would rather see spending cuts on things like the ballooning welfare bill, 5 million working age people not working, and an awful lot of those people, we're not talking about people who are severely disabled, for whom we should be absolutely giving them everything they need to live a decent, a reasonable life. We are talking about people who are claiming mental health problems, which I think, frankly, most of us think, frankly, these are people swinging the lead.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're right to emphasise that people who are genuinely disabled need proper support, and society ought to be generous to them and to help them. But that doesn't mean we should have a scrounger's budget, which is what we're about to get, that the incentives not to work are going up, the incentives to work are going down, and businesses' ability to employ people is going down. This is a terrible way to run the economy.
I mean, I think everybody's in agreement on that, pretty much, apart from some Labour MPs. What is the measure in the budget tomorrow that you are most fearful of?
Well, I think the one that has the worst effect is the freezing of thresholds. It's also a stealth tax, and stealth taxes, and I accept the Tories did this in the past, are the least honest of taxes. But I think we need to keep wealthy people in this country, and more attacks on them will have serious long-term economic consequences, even if it's more politically popular. And increasing welfare spending at this point is clearly the wrong thing to do. We have to cut welfare spending. We can't afford it. We are continuing to live beyond our means, and Rachel Reeves is taking us into a doom loop of tax rises that push the economy down, increase the deficit, and lead to more taxes. It is really it's hard to think of a worse way of running the economy.
Indeed, many people are saying, given that we appear to need tax rises because we haven't got growth and we've seen all the problems in the economy as a result of the last set of tax rises, we are in a bit of a doom loop. You must welcome, though, you mentioned welfare a few times there, the news that the Motability scheme, which helps people with disabilities to get vehicles, sometimes free, sometimes a contribution towards them. Although I'm fascinated by some people needing cars. I mean, I completely understand if someone is physically disabled and can't get on the bus, but I'm not entirely sure why an awful lot of people entitled to them, and there are a huge number of people entitled to them are, but they're going to be barred from being able to get BMWs and Mercedes, at least. Is that at least good news?
Well, but it's trivial in the scheme of things that far too many people are eligible for the Motability scheme. You rightly say that we thought it was for people who were in wheelchairs or needed cars adjusted because they had a serious disability, but it seems to have become for almost anybody who wants to get it, and that can't be right. The number of cars bought on this scheme is one of the major supports for the car industry. So you have a state-subsidised car industry on benefits. This can't be a sensible way to do things. And the whole system's got like that. The taking away the face-to-face interviews for PIP has made it easier to get claims for people who don't necessarily warrant them. We need to put back controls, and we need to make sure benefits go to people who deserve them, because then you can treat the people who deserve them generously, but only if you stop them going to people who don't either deserve or need them.
The thing is, your government, I mean, Ian Duncan-Smith was brilliant at an awful lot of this when he was Work and Pension Secretary. It was actually really working to get more people into work, getting rid of, their workless households, the households that generations had not worked, people on welfare, putting people on universal credit, requiring people to actually look for work. Things were going in the right direction. Then we had lockdown. Look, you and I, we talked about it many, many times, but we massively damaged the economy. We're in a lot of a mess because of that. But we also got the issue of the ballooning welfare, people working on Zoom, particularly in the public sector, and nothing being done about that realistically under the Tories for 3 years after we'd got out of lockdowns. There is an issue, is there not, that actually the party that you're a member of still, and would, I'm sure, love to return as an MP for one day, actually, you didn't deal with the problems, and we can't just blame Labour for it.
Well, I, as you know, tried to get people to get back to work in their offices. I thought working from home was a scam.
You used to walk around and leave post-it notes. I used to love you for that.
I did indeed. Yeah, thank you. But the civil service just refused and wouldn't take any notice of what ministers said. The cabinet decided that people should go back to work, and the civil service said no. And this is part of the problem, that we're not able to govern the country because we have independent, blobbish organisations. We have the 2010 Civil Service Act, which means ministers can't give these sorts of routine orders to civil servants. That's what needs to be changed. We need actually constitutional change to give powers back to ministers so they can get things done for voters. And that's what we came up against. You're absolutely right. What Ian Duncan-Smith did until lockdown was working really well. And after lockdown, it allowed welfare to balloon. And no one's got that under control. Labour's now had nearly 18 months to do it. It is now their fault.
Realistically, looking at the polls, I mean, if there'd been an election yesterday, according to a poll the other day, Conservatives would have had just 14 seats. Doesn't bode well for your chances of returning in Somerset North. But if we have a general election in the next few years, people saying maybe sooner than 2029, the last date for which it can be held, and Nigel Farage and Reform get in, would you support the Conservatives working with them if necessary to do things like changing, you know, our relationship with the civil service, with the government's relationship, and making sure that, you know, governments that are elected democratically can do what they want to do that is endorsed in their manifesto by the public?
Oh yes, of course I would. I'd be in favour of doing a deal with them before an election to try and maximise the share of the vote for the two parties that broadly believe in the same things.
Yep.
At the moment our differences seem to be personality types rather than anything of substantive policy.
OK, very interesting. Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, always good to talk to you. Former Conservative Government Minister, thank you very much. Always nice having those bells ringing out behind us and from College Green. Tom Slater, listening to all of that, your takeaways?
No, I think especially the final point that Jacob Rees-Mogg made there about what's going to happen with the Tories and Reform going into an election, because at the moment it's hard to work out what's in it for either party in a sense, because the Conservatives would have to be conceding that they are no longer the electoral force that they once were, or that should be obvious to anyone, but also Reform...
Anyone who could do maths.
No, exactly. But also on the Reform side, thinking, you know, we're in the insurgency, our aim is to displace the Tories as the party of the centre-right.
Nigel Farage has said, he wants to destroy the Conservative Party. But that's it, there's an element where actually, you know, lots of people who would vote Conservative go, well, if you're going to be in cahoots with the Reform, I don't want to vote for you, I'll vote Lib Dem. And then you've got a lot of people who Reform say, well, hold on a minute, you're supposed to be getting rid of these awful people who've put us in the mess we're in. I do find it interesting, again, when you talk about things like the 2010 Civil Service Act and the inability of governments once elected to do the job, and we saw this with Brexit, we've seen it over welfare, we've seen it on if you literally can't say to someone paid by the public sector, by the taxpayer, working in a government office, you need to be back in your office, you need to be at your desk on Monday morning. You can't just literally just sack people en masse for saying no. And by the way, they would turn up if they were going to be sacked en masse, because they know perfectly well they're unemployable anywhere else. You can't run the country. We are seeing played out again and again. I mean, how weak and lily-livered the Tories were. They had a massive majority. They could have got that through, right? But there would have been strikes. Well, so be it. We'll draft in the army. We normally do, don't we, when they're not busy going to be fighting Russia after we give a surrender plan to Ukraine. But the fight against the blob, it's not going to be about dealing with, if Reform get in and they work with or without the Tories, whoever, the fight is not going to be with the benches opposite in the Commons. It's going to be the people working in government who are going to try and undermine them. That we need to stop that. I don't care whether it's a Labour. Labour can bring in any measure they sodding well want that they've got the support for in Parliament. I can argue against it, I can disagree with it, I can say, you know, I think Wes Streeting is wrong about this, or he's talking about a milkshake tax right now in the House of Commons, or the Prime Minister's wrong about this or that. But they're democratically entitled to do that if it was in their manifesto and they're the democratically elected government. And we need to have the same for any government that is elected of a different political hue.
Now, the civil service has become a big problem for all kinds of reasons. There's the kind of blob mentality that is often discussed, the way in which it does generate its own kind of political biases. There's also just its own...
like the BBC.
There's also just its own dysfunction. I mean, Labour, I think, have really found that coming into office. They kind of assumed that the civil service are the sort of people they could do business with, but they find exactly the same problem. You pull a lever, nothing happens. And then you've also just got... It has its own interests. So when you have a Tory administration saying you'll need to get back to work because a lot of their...
Why? I'm walking the dog on the beach. Why would I do that?
Exactly. Then it doesn't necessarily. Then it's not within their interest to play ball with that either. So all of these things has proven that the people running the British state and kind of manning it are not properly democratically accountable, and you cannot have that.
Well, there's no point us leaving, Brussels, and leaving the EU to have a democratically run government if an unelected blob, which again holds exactly the same views as the EU and the Lib Dems on everything in the civil service, is still in charge. No, I'm sorry, and it needs to be really, really clear. The contracts are going to be changed. The deal is different, and if you don't like it, off you go into the private sector, as if you think there's going to be a private sector after this government's going to be in charge for a few years. But there we are. 12:26 is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Lots of you still getting in touch about Nigel Farage on that. Playground banter, was it, wasn't it? Did he, didn't he do it? Does any of it matter now? Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
December
people smugglers are handing out a cheat manual to migrants on how to lie to claim asylum in the UK. It sets out a step-by-step guide in Arabic on how to pretend to be from the persecuted Bedouin minority, a stateless tribe from Kuwait.
How many Muslim asylum seekers do you ever see seeking asylum in a Muslim country?
Yeah.
It's always baffled me that all these Muslims want to come to a Christian country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back. 12:30 is the time. Coming up, we're going to be talking about what the heck is going on with Donald Trump and the White House and this so-called peace plan, or the 28-point surrender plan that Russia came up with. Now a 19-point supposedly sort of peace plan that Europe has come up with. We'll talk about that in a few moments. First up, let's get to your calls on 0344 499 1000. Still want to have your say on Nigel Farage, but also on the budget. Brian is in London. Brian, what do you want to say?
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon.
I know. Do you know what? This day has gone as quickly as the year has gone.
Better Nigel, I'm a similar age, And we were brought up on World War II films all the time, every day.
Yeah.
Two on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And we used to mock Nazis and we mocked Germans.
Yeah.
So if anyone officious, bossy, a pain in the what's it, we would click our heels, we'd do something like we put a finger on under our nose, or we'd do a funny arm salute.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because we hated anyone. We were mocking. We were taking the pee out of Germans and Nazis. And it was a long time ago. I'll tell you what I'm more worried about is why Tutti is the key never here. Why did he go to a Soviet-style training camp in Czechoslovakia?
Yep.
In his gap year.
Yeah,
that's more relevant because he's still using them policies to screw us, really.
Well, I mean, there is that. We're certainly seeing evidence of that, and that was a fascinating debate, wasn't it? In 2020, it was 2020, wasn't it? What was Keir Starmer? Was he a Blairite or was he a lefty? He's got the suits of the Blairite donated by Lord Ali, but fundamentally he's a complete lefty.
Oh, as far left as you can go, you really can go. I mean, I've got another. I've heard that there's the Guardian are bringing out another scoop against Nigel next week. Apparently, when he was born, he farted, and the Filipino midwife smelt it.
I don't know where to go with that.
It's super racist, you know. So expect that out next week.
Oh, right then, Brian. Thank you very much indeed. I don't know what's happening. Let's go to Andrew, who is in Chelmsford. Hello, Andrew. You want to talk about the budget, don't you?
Yeah, I'm slightly been put on the back foot there by the previous
haven't we all? Haven't we all? Yes.
Yeah, I'll try and sort of gather myself. So, I want to have a little rant / share my thoughts on the budget. Yep. So, I want to give you a little bit of context. I've been an employee where I paid significant amounts of tax over the years.
Yeah.
I've been an employer where I paid salaries, national insurance contribution, corporation tax, and then taken, my take out of that paying tax every stage along the way. My footprint on the state over the years is negligible. My kids went to independent school, private healthcare. Look, no one's going to shed a tear for me. So please, that's not what I'm asking here. I understand the social contract. I have no objection to paying tax. But I do expect to see some tangible evidence of that tax take is being deployed effectively. But what I despise more than any that is the politics of envy.
Oh, I know.
I'm going to explain to people how this manifests itself. Everybody was talking about millionaires going abroad and all this stuff, but there are other ways that this will manifest itself. I've invested in companies, start-up companies, early-stage companies, where I've lost all my money, okay? But I understand the risk of that, the risk-reward. You either make money or you lose money. But when you lose money, you take it on the chin, okay? Now, how this plays out is that someone like me, I will, at this point in time, any risk capital that I may have, I don't deploy it. It doesn't make sense to me anymore. So that means jobs don't get created. There's a huge amount of latent potential out there that won't be deployed because people like me are saying it just doesn't make sense anymore.
It's not worth it.
It doesn't make sense. And I am in the crosshairs of, I've done everything right. I've saved for the future. I've got a pension. I've done everything that I was advised to do. ISIS, blah, blah, blah. And now she's coming for more. Yeah. And it just doesn't make sense.
And it sticks in the craw. And that's the thing. And again, you weren't handed it. There's this idea, I keep seeing this with Labour MPs and some of the people on social media, and there's this idea that's like, and you get it from the Green Party, Zach Malansky, their new leader as well. This whole idea, stopping the yachts is, we don't want to stop the boats, we want to stop the yachts. It's like, I am intensely relaxed about a billionaire or a millionaire having a yacht. Good for you, I say. I wish I could afford one.
And just to reiterate, I'm a capitalist, but I believe in the social contract. It makes sense to me. But at this point in time, that relationship between the capitalists who understands the social contract doesn't make sense to me anymore.
No, exactly. No, and that's it. An awful lot of people, again, I know an awful lot of people say perfectly happy. They're big earners. They're really happy to pay their fair share of tax. But there comes a point when it's just a punishment meeting rather than sharing out the burden. Andrew, couldn't agree with you more on all of that. Brilliant call. Thank you so much indeed. 0344 499 1000 to have your say. That is the number. Up next, we're going to talk to a former advisor into the White House, Steve Gill, about what is going on with Ukraine. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:38 is the time. The Prime Minister is currently delivering a statement in the House of Commons on Ukraine. There have been some reports, some claims from the US that the Ukrainians have agreed to a peace deal. We'll try and get you some information on that. Let's welcome right now Steve Gill. He's a former advisor to both the Clinton and Bush administrations. Joins us right now. Good afternoon to you, Steve.
Hey, Julia, good to see you.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I mean, it's extraordinary if that is the case. Look, first of all, we had this 28-point peace deal. I mean, it was a surrender deal, by all accounts, written originally by the Kremlin. Russia being given more land than they've even managed to conquer over the best part of 4 years of war. And now we've got a European 19-point plan, which basically takes out a lot of the more egregious claims of the Russian plan. But we've got talks between Trump and Zelensky. We've got supposedly there's still this Thursday deadline for a deal. Otherwise, Trump's walking away. What on earth, Steve, is going on?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem in the adjustments to this deal, whether it's egregious or not, is that Zelensky and the European Union are demanding that the provision calling for an audit of the billions of dollars that have been provided to Ukraine be provided, that there be an accounting of where have U.S. and U.K. tax dollars gone. The fact that they don't want an audit, the fact that you've seen corruptocrats in Ukraine flee the country with billions and they don't want accountability, and that's being removed, tells me that there are serious problems.
I really don't think that is the biggest issue. I hate to. Did you see what happened with U.S. money in Iraq and Afghanistan? Billions upon billions upon billions just disappeared like that. Wars result in corruption, and every former Soviet state is riddled with corruption. We know that. That is not the main issue when thousands of people are being killed, for goodness sake.
Well, you would think that Zelensky would want to stop the killing. Instead, he wants to make sure the money flow continues.
He does. He's been dealing with corruption. He's not going to be able to deal with it overnight. There's no doubt at all. I mean, this is a Kremlin talking point. I do hate it when you do this, Steve. It's
not a Kremlin talking point. It's an American taxpayer talking point. I want to know where my money went.
Well, you weren't bothered when Iraq and Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah, I was.
Yeah,
I have been.
We should all be worried where the money goes. There's no doubt at all. However, that's got nothing.
I don't like it when our members of Congress are trading stocks and getting rich.
Yeah, I'm with you.
In the US.
I don't think, with all due respect, Steve, I don't think that's the key issue right now when we're talking about ending a war in Europe and the terms in which it could be ended, and whether or not Russia gets the message that come back for a bit more in a few years when you're ready, and the message that Russia gets up, and indeed Xi Jinping in China, because he's randomly he had a chat with Donald Trump the other day about Taiwan, about the message about what US and other NATO members, but crucially the biggest military and industrial power in the world, the US, will do when foreign dictators, murderous dictators, basically attack democracies. And what is the message that is coming out of the US right now?
Well, I think the message is that a democracy is not one where you cancel elections, cancel foreign the media, cancel the rest of it.
We didn't have elections during the Second World War, Steve.
Julia, you have to deal with truth. And
we didn't have elections during the Second World War. Why not? Because we were at war. Ukraine is at war. Loads of women have left. Men are on the front line. You can't hold a democratic election in the middle of a war. No country does. Don't tell me America did in the Second World War. You weren't actually being invaded at the time. Can you answer the actual point about whether or not your country is willing to step up and protect a nation from being invaded by a foreign murderous dictator?
I think that the Europeans, when Boris Johnson says Britain's going to start sending troops on the ground, when Macron and Germany put bodies on the ground in Ukraine, then you can talk to us. When you won't defend your neighborhood, then you can talk to us.
I agree with you. And Donald Trump was absolutely right. This is an issue for the Europeans. And he was right in 2016 when he said the EU members of the NATO weren't spending enough. I couldn't agree with him more on that. And I said so at the time. But no one is actually, and the Ukrainians are quite clear, they say we don't need, NATO troops on the ground. We don't need US, British, French, German troops on the ground. We've got our own men who are fighting valiantly on the front lines. We need the weaponry, we need the support, we need Russia's oil and gas billions to be turned off completely. That's what they need. Is America willing to help to do that? Or is your president just too in hock to Vladimir Putin?
I don't think there's anything that indicates, other than the Trump derangement crew, that thinks President Trump is answering to Vladimir Putin. And by the way, Julia, the United States had an election during our Civil War and re-elected Abraham Lincoln. So you can hold elections.
You weren't being invaded by a foreign force.
Well, those of us in the southern United States think we were.
Well, but there you are. I mean, seriously. The thing about Donald Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin is when Donald Trump sees Israel very, very clearly. He did a peace deal there. Now, whether that holds is one matter or another. We don't know whether it will hold. But he got those hostages who were being tortured and starved in tunnels back. And all credit to him for that. He does seem to have a blind spot when anything involves Vladimir Putin. It's been very, very clear. Often he will come round to the idea about how we need to support Ukraine. Then there's a phone call from Vladimir Putin, or there's a meeting with him, and he changes his tune. There are many people I know who are actually quite big fans of Donald Trump, and certainly, like me, were of the view that he was definitely the better option at the last US presidential election over Kamala Harris, but also still think that, yeah, he seems to have a view of Vladimir Putin that is not borne out by the facts, and that Vladimir Putin is a very dangerous man and he needs to be put back in his box and not someone who can be trusted. No one else in NATO thinks he can be trusted, least of all the Polish, the Baltic states, those who are next on the list for Vladimir Putin to conquer. So why on earth does your president keep seeming to think that you can take Vladimir Putin at his word?
Because I think you have to have two willing partners to get any kind of a peace deal. And as long as Vladimir Zelensky keeps demanding that the war continues until they are given back the territory that has been taken, until Vladimir Zelensky acknowledges that NATO expansion is not going to happen. He still demands that NATO expand into Ukraine.
No, Vladimir Zelensky has, not demand, NATO doesn't expand. People apply to join because they're scared of being invaded by Russia. I wonder why they would be scared of that. Zelensky there's been loads of evidence in the last 6 months so that he has conceded that he may well end up losing the territory that has already been conquered by the Russians. But to hand over territory they haven't even conquered, the fortress towns that are currently protecting the rest of the country, including the capital Kyiv, from Russian forces, and to make Ukraine pay for the privilege, and to not offer a proper, absolute cast-iron guarantee that not one Russian steel cap can go over that line, otherwise NATO will come to their aid. Why would any leader of any country, including Ukraine, agree to anything else?
Because Zelensky hasn't agreed to those points, Julia. He is still saying that they will do a deal, and then they still want to be in NATO, and NATO is still listing the
They want to be in NATO to protect them from a future war.
They're not a member of NATO, and the deal that was made decades ago was that there would not be an expansion of NATO in Ukraine.
You know what?
Either the US or the UK lied.
Do you know that deal, Steve? That was signed by the Americans, the Russians and the Brits. And you know that we all also guaranteed, the US and the Brits, we guaranteed to maintain Ukraine's national sovereignty.
But they've also tried to expand NATO and are still continuing to do so.
They don't try and expand NATO.
Zelensky, by the way,
Ukraine has not got NATO membership.
They haven't yet, but they keep saying that's what's next.
Why do they want
it?
Why did Finland want to join? Why did Sweden want to join? They never felt the need for NATO membership before. Why do they want to join? Why do the Baltic states want to be in NATO? Why does Poland want to be in NATO? Could there be any reason between all of these countries about why they want to be in NATO?
Well, I think some of them do have the fear of Russia.
No.
But the fact is that Ukraine was Russian. Eastern Ukraine still considers itself Russian. And again, Zelensky is not agreeing to what you're saying he's agreed to. You need to listen to what Zelensky's saying, Julia. He is not agreeing to what you're pointing out, that he is willing to concede the territory. He's willing to concede that he can't have it now, but they're going to take it back. He's the one wanting to have a future war.
No, not conceding to a foreign national invading force taking their territory. Just out of interest, which part of America are you happy for Russia to invade and you would just go, yeah, fine, keep it? Just tell me, which part of America?
I think we would defend our country. Julia, you have hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men draft dodging and fleeing. They should fight for their country the way we have done in our country in past.
I hate to tell you, Steve, in the past, I hate to tell you, only 40% of young Americans said they would fight for their country in America. You're going to have a problem if and when a war does happen yourself. People flee conscription.
Julia, we have enough guns in the South. We can stave off anybody that wants to come here. We have guys that sit in trees deer hunting for 8 hours hoping to shoot at stuff. I don't think the U.S. has to worry about a military invasion. Unfortunately, we've allowed an illegal alien invasion.
How nice for you. But I think the people of Ukraine, and certainly in eastern Ukraine, might feel rather differently. Steve, whenever we talk to you about this, genuinely, I may as well just call the sodding Kremlin and get them on air. Former advisor to Clinton and Bush administration, Steve Gill. Tom Slater, help me out, for the love of God.
Bit of an indication of how we got here with this peace deal, I suppose, insofar as there's a lot of people, not just in American politics, but in politics generally, who have bought into this idea that somehow Ukraine are the problem.
And they brought it on themselves.
Look, we can talk about the broader context in which this conflict erupted. Of course, there are two sides to every story. That's not what this is. It's blaming Ukraine for its own invasion and blaming Ukraine for for peace not suddenly breaking out. What is being talked about is essentially they need to capitulate or else, and that is something which obviously no leader of Ukraine, regardless of whether it's Volodymyr Zelensky or any of the alternatives, would have happily agreed to.
Absolutely. Or we would... sorry. What a helpful time to be sneezing. I do apologise, everybody. Again, Winston Churchill will be rolling in his grave. 12:49 is the time. Up next, well, he certainly would be rolling in his grave, about a cancellation of a flag exhibition, a Union flag exhibition. Union flags like you've never seen them before. But we're going to be talking to the artist who has been cancelled by a left-wing council. Funny that. This is Talk.
Big news.
People smugglers are handing out a cheat manual to migrants on how to lie to claim asylum in the UK. It sets out a step-by-step guide in Arabic on how to pretend to be from the persecuted Bedouin minority, a stateless tribe from Kuwait.
How many Muslim asylum seekers do you ever see seeking asylum in a Muslim country?
Yeah.
It's always baffled me that all these Muslims want to come to a Christian country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. Calm down now. But I will be calm, given I'm in the studio with Tom Slater, who's had a film documentary premiere cancelled in the last week. It's got a new venue. It's going to be shown tonight. And next, my next guest is an artist who's been cancelled by, of all people, Brighton and Hove Council, complete lefty council. But they have cancelled his exhibition featuring Union flags, like you've never seen them before, over fears it might offend or scare people. The councillors showed due to fears they said he could put visitors and their belongings at risk. At a library. It's all rather bizarre. Let's talk about this with Gil Moelem Duron. He's the artist cancelled by the council and joins us right now. Very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I mean, for those who don't know, if those who are watching, we've got most people are listening, lots of people are watching on YouTube, can see some of the images you've got. You basically, talk us through just your art, the Union flag. It's not a Union Jack, as many people would recognise it, red, white and blue, multicoloured, lots of different designs. What's the sort of the idea, the message you're trying to send with your artwork using sort of the Union flag?
Okay, there are two messages or interpretation of the Union Jack or the Union flag. One that showing, instead of the three colors, using the basic of the design, but changing the colors with textile designs from various communities who live in this country, including there is even a representative to Victoria created tartan that she made, Queen Victoria. And the other matter of this flag is that it's ever changing, so it's basically being updated as other communities joining this country.
Yeah, and it's about, I mean, it's basically representing and celebrating diversity. It's created in collaboration with the organisation Stand Up to Racism. Now, there might be some people who would say, oh, I don't want you messing with the flag, but this is art. I 100% defend. I think these images are absolutely stunning and beautiful, I have to say. But the local council said that this would somehow... and that's what I can't work out. They said that displaying national flags, this was going to be at Jubilee Library in Brighton, displaying national flags could be taken out of their artistic context and could put visitors and their belongings at risk. You got a phone call and then an email saying that library visitors might encounter the work unexpectedly and take offence. Who entering a library, seeing these images, would take offence at them? Would they take offence at them because it was the Union flag at heart, or would they take offence at them because it was diverse representations on the Union flag? Which was the concern? Do you know?
No, really, this is need to be asked to the council and the library. What I do like to mention is that together with this interpretation of the Union flag or the Union Jack, there were two other flags supposed to be part of the exhibition. One is the St. George flag, and the Union Jack slightly modified to include the historical facts about, for example, St. George, that was a Palestinian and a migrant. Originally, his grave is in the country I migrated from. And that on the Union Jack, the English originally were a Germanic tribe, they are Angles, so I'm mentioning that. And they were also migrant, or if you want, colonizers, and hence we have the
wait a minute,
English.
so we're colonizers even though we were colonized. It's so difficult to keep up. I know that was a red, white and blue flag, and it's got English, German, and the English were migrants. There's a lot of this argument, isn't there? Look, I don't view my country in that way. I don't view my flag in that way. However, I wouldn't find it offensive. I certainly would never want an artwork cancelled. I mean, nice to see it. I think the images are very, very beautiful. They are political, you could argue. But what is your reaction? Have you found somewhere else to? I mean, this is an exhibition that has been in many other places before. Have you found somewhere else to hire? And what's your message back, very briefly, to Brighton and Hove Council?
I really baffled. This flag was at the library in the past. It was on bus stops in Brighton. It was at the Tate Modern, turned contemporary at Margate 3 days after Brexit, and there were no incidents from any sides. So I think we are getting into a culture of fear, considering some of the action by the far right, recent actions, and I think that's what they're afraid for.
They think the far right is going to be, I mean, again, who they're referring to as far right, because I think they include me, they're going to be upset about it, and they're going to, I don't know, storm the library or something. Is there much of an issue with the far right in Brighton and Hove?
I mean, there were incidents in the library in the past against transgender people.
Were there women asking men to get out of the ladies' toilets?
No, there was exhibition there. There were reading by trans people. And I know there were some incidents. I really can't tell what, can speak for the library. I hope I find a place.
You're as baffled as we are. Unfortunately, time is against us. Gil Merlin-Duron, an artist cancelled by Brighton Hove Council. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. Tom Slater, I mean, you haven't been cancelled. Just very briefly, the thing about this is, weirdly, it seems to be the opposite of what we normally hear, which is something, lefties might not like it, and so right-wing. But this seems, this is a completely Mr. Progressive, Mr. Diversity artwork. You'd think they'd love it, but they're worried that other people won't. I'm so confused. But either way, no one should be cancelled like this.
No, absolutely. A lot of the time it's politics, a lot of the time it's just plain old cowardice and risk aversion, and that probably seems to be the case here. I can't imagine Brighton Hove Council were offended.
Bella Sankey leads that. We've spoken to Bella Sankey. I mean, she's all about the migrants.
Exactly. So you would think that, but this is again, it's just cowardice.
The world has gone mad. I mean, my thing in anything, if someone's going to be offended and not like something, they might kick off. Well, they're the problem, so you police them. You know, I would argue you shouldn't have highly political things in the library, but I mean, the flags look fine to me. I mean, I don't know why everyone's so obsessed with St George.